Good evening, Draftaholics, and welcome to Draft Punks, back by very popular demand. I think we have our most popular video series yet, so we're going to keep the intro nice and short this time, everyone. Please welcome back the best player in the world, Simon Nielsen.
Hello, I am finally back from my winter hibernation. I've been sleeping for about 4 months now since getting back from Worlds, and so I'm finally ready to do our draft video like we usually do.
Oh, look, the people have been wanting this, so we had to give it to them, whether it was late or not. And I'm glad you've been hibernating, because it's not cold enough to do that here in Australia. So the plan for today is we are going to run through every pack of Simon's draft number 1 at Worlds, which we actually have full coverage of. We didn't need to rebuild it like we've had to do from some previous videos. So if you've watched these videos before, the aim is we are going to go as deep as humanly possible. We are going to analyze absolutely everything we can. So if you are a complete draft nerd and just love geeking out over this sort of stuff like me and Simon, this is the place for you. And then at the end, we're also going to have a quick chat about Simon's second draft. We're not going to run through the whole thing, but Simon's got some really good insights about playing with play boosters that draft highlights really nicely. So we're going to go through that at the end. Sound good, Simon?
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I mean, I just woke up, but yeah, I'm fully ready.
I just woke up too, and we are on opposite ends of the day.
Oh no, sorry, I woke up from my 4-month nap. Like, follow the theme here. Yeah, no.
All right. All right, well, we're both awake, so we should have some really high quality analysis then. All right, let's kick things off. I have this really bad feeling that my camera's about to die, which is really unfortunate. Hopefully we can do something fun with that in editing. Okay, so this is you. You're sitting down at World's Draft number 1, which is Duskmourn.
Yeah.
Just while we're waiting for things to kick off, what were your general kind of plans or hopes for where you want to end up in a Duskmourn draft? Were there some archetypes you'd prefer to be in, prefer not to be in?
Yeah, so like our team had like a strong preference for the blue control decks. Like the card draw and Unable to Scream, like being the key focus around that. Blue-white being the best versions of these, but like also like blue-black, blue-red could work if it comes to it. Blue-green are also like very good, right? So we liked all the blue decks, or at least to some amount. You could maybe like 3-color stuff as well. In general, actually, just like being open to 3-color stuff was pretty important. And then there's an archetype I really like personally, which is like red-black, which can go in a number of different ways, like both like very controlling, like synergistic, to like just like almost mono red, just full speed and topped off with a few of these sacrifice synergies. And I'd actually done in one of our playtest drafts, like in the house a couple of days before this, I had actually 3-0'd with a deck that I thought was a complete train wreck, but it was just like a bunch of like, red dudes and like some Razorkin Needlehead in red-black, and but it just played out super well and like had a lot of like ability to go long. And so I knew that like that was an avenue I could take. But I was also preferring still the blue decks.
Yeah, and so seeing an Unable to Scream here is kind of exactly what I see if you want to head towards those decks. I know a lot of my friends were surprised to see you first pick Unable to Scream, but I wasn't. I think it's the key card for these blue decks, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's the best blue common in this set. And it's like kind of because it's like the thing that makes your clunky card draw spells work. So it's like just nice synergy, and then also like it's an enchantment of top of everything, and it's just it's like I think we had it as our top common in the set overall, if I remember correctly.
Wow. Yeah, no, I respect it. How far behind was Glimmerburst?
Like probably in the top 5, I think. I mean, we also had the Meat Locker like very close to that as well. Like those 3 were.
Oh, interesting.
10.
Yeah.
So yeah, like but that core of like blue decks was like really high in our focus.
Yeah, great. I'm completely with that. There were a lot of people that were surprised you didn't seem too interested in the reluctant role model. What were your thoughts on that sort of card?
Oh yeah, so that's something I've been interested in the past, but then realized now that it's like, not much better than the acrobat, the like common version of the same thing. And so yeah, kind of like reluctantly have admitted that it's like an uncommon level, but like it's not better than the best common. There's also like a Glassworks here, which I like, but then also that pack actually had some cards that I was noticing for like their potential to wheel. So there was like, the Vile Mutilator, the like 7-drop demon is like, kind of good for like some of these more controlling black decks. And there was a Diversion Specialist, which is great for like, it's like not that high of a pick. I mean, probably other people pick it higher, but it's something I could see wheel, but it's actually really nice in these like sacrificing red decks as your top end.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. I'm really keen to talk about the black red deck. It'll kind of come up in conversation as we go, I think.
Yeah, it's fair. I'm just noting that like I'm noting cards that could potentially come back, and if they're not coming back, that is part of a signal as well.
Sure. Now this pick was really interesting to me. You've got a Scorching Dragonfire, a Painter Studio, and a Bottomless Pool.
Yeah.
Given that I first picked an Unable to Scream, I'm really interested in Bottomless Pool. How close do you think it is to Scorching Dragonfire?
I think those picks are like pretty close, and like you might even want to like just let your like coloring, like the color of your picks already decide that. But I end up taking Scorching Dragonfire. I mean, I think some of my teammates also disagreed with this, and in general, I'm not the biggest fan of drafting all cards of the same color unless I have a really strong reason to do that, because it gives you a bit less wiggle space, if that makes sense. Like if I have 5 first picks in 5 different colors, I know I'm going to play at least 2 or maybe 3 of them, right, in my final deck, no matter which side it is. And like ideally, you do something in between where it's not quite as wild as 5 different colors in your first 5 picks. But like I kind of want to like keep my options open in that direction. And I think the Bottomless Pool is also like both that and also the Painter Studio was in this pack. I also think Painter Studio is kind of like a higher upside card than the Scorching Dragonfire, but it's a little bit more narrow in the type of decks it wants to go in. And the same thing with Bottomless Pool. Like if I'm super controlling, the card goes down in value. Like it kind of requires you to have some flyers, etc. I mean, it's still a pretty good card, right? But the Scorching Dragonfire, no matter if your red deck is aggressive or controlling, it's gonna like make its way in there, and you can even splash it. So that's why I ended up picking that. But I think maybe that was actually wrong.
So in hindsight, would you do something different?
I'm not quite sure. I think probably not, but it's very unclear whether or not I was wrong or not. So it's hard to say. Like if I go back, I definitely felt more comfortable if I took the Scorching Dragonfire here. And it's also worth noting that like I don't think like blue card, red card. Now I'm blue red, or like even that like I'm picking this because it goes well with that my Unable to Scream. I'm picking it almost specifically because it doesn't go that well, or like if I'm playing these two in the same deck, I'm probably like a teamer deck or something. Like I might be 3-colored. It's like not that likely that I'm going to just be like blue-red control, though it can happen. So it's more to like keep my options open for like different avenues.
Yeah, that's really interesting. We talked about this a little bit in our last video, if I remember correctly. About we talk a lot as drafters about staying open, but there's kind of two different, probably a few different things that could mean, right? You're kind of saying that you would prefer to have your first 3 picks be 3 different colors because that leaves you open to basically any direction and you can play 2 of the 3. Whereas the other perspective would be, I'd rather start my draft with 3 cards of the same color because then I can be that color and then move in any of the 4 directions that takes me.
Yeah, it's like the difference between like semi-open and fully open. Right, like if you do that thing where you take 3 picks of like one thing, you're like open to 4 different archetypes. The other way, you're like open to like potentially 10 archetypes, or maybe a few less. Like if you first pick like blue, red, green, you're probably not going to be black, white, though it is still possible. At least with my philosophy, I won't rule that out.
That makes a lot of sense actually, and you see a lot of comment sections and Twitch chats saying, "Oh, this is a train wreck so far." But it's usually just because the drafters are doing what you're describing and staying very open and very flexible. It's not a train wreck when you're doing that.
I think something really important these days is like the power level of the cards in the play boosters is like high enough that I don't really mind burning like half of my first 8 picks if it comes to it.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that's kind of fine. And you find like a lot of the sets are also quite synergistic, and so you find a lot of the power level in the cards that wheel. And so this is why I'm describing like the cards I also note that could potentially wheel, because if I draft open enough, I can kind of wait for my decision until I see what the rest of the table has picked up on that I was expecting to wheel or didn't expect to wheel out of a pack. And so you can get a lot more like information out of that.
Yeah, that's great. All right, let's kind of see how that philosophy plays out in our third pack. What were your thoughts on blue-red as a deck overall? I know that the coverage team were talking it down pretty heavily, but I quite like it.
I think it's the worst of the blue decks for sure. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't like super high on it. You can actually see me here like considering the blue-green land, because as I said, if I'm playing those two cards together, I'm probably teamer. I think that's much stronger than just being blue-red. You just combine that with the manifest style of green, and you have the green room that ramps just goes so well with the room synergies in blue-red. And the Moldering Gym.
I wanted to ask about your thoughts on picking the lands in this set. Because you were talking about how the power level and the play boosters is so high. I remember when I first came into this set, I was picking the lands really, really aggressively because I wanted to have the option to play the powerful cards I opened. I cooled off on that a bit as the set went on, but now I'm not quite sure. What was your perspective on that?
I think, like, in general, focusing on, like, picking the lands and the fixing has, like, the added upside of, again, like, it's a play booster thing where another thing that's, like, remarkable about those is that like, you have a lot of, like, pretty powerful rares. And you really want the ability to like play rares that you open. And if your first pack is a brick, I mean, I took the best common in like our opinion, but like that could have been like a bomb rare, right? And I missed my shot at getting one of those. And so the more like you draft your mana to be flexible, or like even delay your decision where you can maybe even pick your second color or based on the rare you open in pack 2, like you kind of like give this like more opportunity to like get some of the great rares. So I think in general, there's like a lot of like value to mana fixing that is not to be underestimated. It obviously depends a bit set from set, but I think actually Duskmourn was intentionally designed to support 3-color decks, because like there was like we had a lot of like those decks floating around in our internal drafts, and like looking at what other PC drafters did.
Yeah, and do you think that there's a difference because of that fact? Like there were some color combinations that went together really nicely, that some that were a little bit harder. So all of the like Tamer and Jund I found were pretty common 3 colors, whereas like the black-white duel has a lot less value than something like the Lakeside Shack here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there was like an Absan Reanimator deck, which was like a totally reasonable archetype. You could also do like Esper Reanimator. So like there was like the black-white archetype in this set wasn't that good as a 2-color deck. It really wanted something else. Even Mado Reanimator, I think like Sean Emmanuel drafted that.
Yep.
So there is some value in the black-white land, but these are like kind of narrow archetypes. I also think like Sultai was really popular choice, like kind of like combining. It's like similar to the Deeper thing, like you combine like the Manifest Dread like engine thing with that also like automatically helps with your Delirium, and you can use the black removals to kind of like sustain that archetype, which actually was the other deck that Sean Emmanuel drafted, was Sultai. So.
Oh right, cool. Yeah, interesting. And I guess with all of that said, this is still a pretty clear Patchwork Beastie. Is that a significant kind of sight ahead of the duel?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, like you don't mind picking up duels over like semi-replacement level commons. Like you don't pick them over the top commons, and you certainly don't pick them over the top uncommons. And Patchwork Beastie is like one of the top 10 uncommons in the set, I think, if I remember correctly.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I have been sleeping for a while now, hibernating, but I think
this should be fresh. It should be fresh in your memory.
It's pretty good, and also it goes kind of well with Scorching Dragonfire, because like red green is another one of those nice archetypes, and also would go well in a blue green deck, or like you could. It gives you a lot of like options to like pivot in different directions.
Yeah, and goes nicely with everything you've picked so far.
I'm also noting here that there's the turn inside out, which is another one of those like if it wheels, it's the signal.
Yeah, we see quite a few turn inside outs through this draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm keen to talk about that a little bit more. I assume you and your team were as high on it as the rest of the world.
Well, the rest of the arena truthers were like way too high on the card.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, like it's a card that is supposed to wheel most of the time. But it is, I think, quite important to a very specific style of red deck. So it's not necessarily the red deck that like has Patchwork Beastie and Scorching Dragonfire in it. It's not as great in like red green Delirium, but like in the like red black style of red deck or mono red deck, I know that like I think like one of the top 8 drafters top 8 competitors Fam in this tournament actually drafted mono red. I think maybe he forced mono red. I'm really like looking forward to talking to him about this when I see him in Chicago. But because I heard a rumor and I thought it was a really interesting draft strategy. But anyways, these like super heavy red aggressive decks, also red white, that can play really cheap things and then use the then use the turn inside out as a way to like very cheaply break through blockers without like kind of like losing your tempo, because you're using it on 1-drops that you're gonna like kind of sneak in damage with. Like that type of red deck, it's really nice, and obviously also combining it with First Strike is like another nice thing. So so I was really on the lookout for it for like this type of red black deck that I've been talking about, or like the red white things, and like just seeing like if it doesn't come back like that, makes me a little bit lower on that style of red deck. But then I know that my Scorching Dragonfire should maybe be applied in a different direction.
Yeah, I remember saying early in the format that turn inside out plus Clockwork Percussionist was Splinter Twin.
yeah. That's a really good combination there. And speaking of good combinations here, we see a combination of two sides of a room that work really well together here.
Yeah, we got the Painter Studio to keep you in red, but then the Final Vengeance, which starts to push you in the direction of the black red deck that you've been talking about.
Yeah, it's definitely like a tempting card. I mean, I think if I have to prioritize them, it's possible the Painter Studio is better than Final Vengeance in red black. Not 100% sure on that. But obviously it also like really opens the door to red white, which is an archetype that like quite relies on having pump effects for like your Midnight Mayhem type things. Like that card is not that great by itself, but if you have a Painter Studio, it's an incredible card.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah,
I think Painter Studio opens a lot of doors.
So that's also why like the Scorching Dragonfire versus Painter Studio pick is kind of close, because like the studio is just such high upside. But
yeah,
I'm very unlikely to play Painter Studio in the same deck as Unable to Scream. I think maybe there was a red-blue tempo deck available. I hadn't tried to draft that yet in this format, but like so you could potentially mix them. And it's also like not the greatest with Patchwork Beastie, because like you make a bit of a bigger thing, but it's fine, right? It's just draw some cards. Like it's not a terrible card in that style of deck. But I think it's really important to like try and envision like how it functions in different styles of decks when you're thinking about like how open it leaves you. And I think the main advantage of it is that it is such a good card in a few very specific types of archetypes, and kind of like opens the doors to those. The Final Vengeance, for instance, would be better, like more able to combine with the Unable to Scream with a Patchwork Beastie. So it has like a lot more flexibility. But I think the power level is low enough, plus presenting a fourth color that I'm not necessarily like, I might not end up like at all. So I think I end up taking the studio here, but noting that the Final Vengeance is a card that I wouldn't necessarily always expect to see fourth pick. And so it isn't like a full signal telling me black is open, but I'm going to like, note that down mentally that this is part of a signal. And then I will see if that story like keeps repeating. And the main thing I'm looking for actually is if I see a pack late next pick that has 0 black cards, I'm not going to erase my previous information just because like there's a pack without black cards, because we are drafting play boosters and it's possible the card just has no good black cards to begin with. So it's much more important to like look for the cards that are actually there. And if I see a 7th pick good black card, like that is going to combine with my 4th pick Final Vengeance to create this signal.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you say that the Painter Studio doesn't go well with the Unable to Scream, particularly since, as you said earlier, the Unable to Scream goes really well with all the card draw effects, and especially one like Painter Studio that wants you to be able to play all of the cards in a single turn. Why do you think they don't work well together?
Well, Painter Studio is like not well. It is true that like it's nice to hit Unable to Scream off Painter Studio, but you don't make full use of the card because you're not as interested in the +1 unless you are the what was it called, like the Piranha 2/1 flyer version of Red Blue. And it also draws cards in a way that's like, you know, not the greatest for a control deck. Like you're gonna want to run counter spells in these decks, and you can't hit those. You're gonna want to run like expensive card draw, and you can't hit that. Like it's really hard to chain into like bigger things. The land cyclers is another good thing, like that it just doesn't interact with. It's much better in a deck that has a way lower curve than what these blue control decks are asking of you.
Okay, yeah, that makes it interesting. I guess that's really making sure you're focusing on kind of all aspects of the card and the kind of deck that it's going to fit into.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm taking this here as like more of an upside thing. And also, like, I think the Final Vengeance here kind of like also aids that decision because, you know, this is at least like part of a signal that black is open. And it's definitely a signal that red is open, right? Like, or at least, you know, like I got the dragon, now I get the, what's it called? The like fear of being hunted.
Yeah.
And which is like, you know, that combined with the Painter Studio, like, it's kind of like a fairly clear I should be red, probably, in this draft. And so like also seeing the Final Vengeance, and I think also there's a sporogenic infection in this pack, which is another one of those like I wouldn't necessarily expect to see that fifth. Is like now that kind of, you know, melds together with the information I got from the Final Vengeance, and I'm like, okay, so I'm taking this red card, and I'm going to try and lean red-black despite having 0 black cards right now. Because it is starting to look like black is going to be open as well. There is a bit of a danger with the way that this is folding out because I'm also passing those 2 good black cards. So I'm also creating another like black signal downstream. And so if you switch into a color a little bit too late, you might end up having put someone else into that color, and then you're gonna get not the greatest pack 2, but then hopefully you just have to cross your fingers that your pack 3 is going to be great. I think that happens actually a lot with my drafting style because I am like so patient, and it's like kind of hard to read. Like the person who I'm passing to has a tough time reading like which color I'm in, right? Because I'm just picking rainbows. But
it's because I get a lot of people talking about thinking about the signal that you're sending. You know, when there's 2 good black cards in a pack, they'll say, oh, okay, let's take the blue card because that way we're not going to get cut off in the next pack. But it's so hard to predict what colors the people downstream of you are going to be taking.
Yeah, exactly. Like you could take that black card out of the 2 black card pack, and the person next to you won't even touch it. Like maybe it'll go like 4th pick, right? Like you can't control that.
Exactly.
Or you could like send the 2. You could like send the 2 black cards, and the person will be like, "Oh, here's another blue card," and it's like you get cut off anyways.
That's
like,
it.
You don't know exactly like how things will work out. And yeah, so I think it's like very easy to overrate these things. They can be good tiebreakers. And I think the most important thing to think of them is just like it just puts a little bit of pressure on you when you're trying to move into a color pair that is open, that you do that like kind of like quickly. And that you take some risks to remove some of the signals from the pack of a color combination you're speculating in. So like let's say 6th pick, I get like if I'm, you know, still drafting like some of this like, red green style thing, and then like later I see a pack between like a good green card that could like, you know, good generic green card and like what would it be, like the red black creature gold card, the like 3-drop whatever, I forgot his name, but yeah, it has like sacrifice synergies, right? Like one that is like, okay, if I pass this, I'm sending a very clear signal that red black could be open. It's also kind of a signal to me. So instead of taking the green card that might keep me a bit more open, I should take the risk on this red black card so that I remove the signal from the pack of this thing that I'm speculating I could possibly be in. And if I don't end up red black, it's okay because like I didn't give up that much. Compared to if I do end up red black, but I also passed a red black gold card, and I could potentially create a red black drafter right next to me. So I don't know how easy that was to follow, but
yeah, and it's really interesting, right? Because you're already thinking that there's a reasonable chance you could be red black when you haven't taken a single black card, because I think some of the twists and turns that happened in this draft quite surprised the coverage team, but with this sort of perspective that you're providing, it makes a lot of sense.
It actually didn't surprise Chion that much, but that's because Chion is really good at this format as well. I was like super pleased listening to this because he was just with me all the way. And yeah, definitely like, you know, a lot of the like weird picks I made, he could kind of like explain. I think the only one that is like kind of weird is the like pick 6 and pick 7. But yeah, that's which is coming up soon. So
okay, let's head over to it then. Is Fear of Being Hunted something that is just kind of a generically good red card? Do you see it slotting into any kind of vaguely aggressive leaning red deck?
Yeah, it's definitely better in aggressive decks. It's unlike the Painter Studio, it actually goes really well with the Patchwork Beastie, because it's like, you know, 2 types.
Enchantment creature.
Yeah, just and haste is so good in that archetype. And you can also play it in the more controlling decks, and there's even like you can combine it with like the Most Valuable Slayer, which is like not the greatest of a combo because it's like open deck list. So I mean, I will rarely get my PT opponents with that. They'll just leave back an extra blocker and make sure they can always double block.
But I mean that is a potent combination in this format.
Well, yeah, I mean it's a potent combination on Arena. It's not as good in the feature draft when it's open deck list. So sadly,
sure. Okay. Okay, that makes sense.
Also, Most Valuable Slayer is a card that I'm pretty low on in these red aggressive decks. Because I want my curve to be so low. Like I mentioned, the Diversion Specialist as like that's the only 4-drop I'm even like considering. And that one I don't consider very highly. Right, I want to wheel that card, and so that's because like this is the style deck that really makes Painter Studio and these Clockwork Percussionists work really well, because you try to have your curve top at 3 and have like plenty of 1-drops, and so it's just like this super sleek deck, making you play like much more like mana efficiently against people trying to manifest dread and play tap lands and like, you know, spend tempo mana fixing and drawing cards.
Okay, let's have a look at pick 6. It looks like there's not a ton in this pack for you. Walk me through your thoughts here.
This is a pretty weak pack. I do think I picked the wrong card here, but I'm basically thinking about picking like the Smoky Lounge and the Cautious Survivor here. Smoky Lounge being like, I do have like some of these red cards and then a blue card, and so I'm thinking, well, I mean, you know, I have my blue first pick that could go with that. I think the issue is that Smoky Lounge kind of like pushes me in a different style of red deck than where Fear of Being Hunted and especially Painter Studio works well. Because it's like much more of a controlling card. Like you need to spend a lot of mana developing your rooms. And it's not even that good in the rooms deck, I don't think. It's like the payoff is just not there for this to be like a reason to be in rooms.
Yeah, interesting. Like I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit more on that blue-red rooms deck, because you were saying before you prefer to be kind of in the teamer space rather than just straight up rooms. Is the blue-red rooms control thing something you would prefer not to head towards? Do you think that the archetype is just not that powerful?
Yeah, I would definitely prefer to like not get there unless the packs are really open for it. I mean, I did have one rooms deck that had like 4 Smoky Lounges and then a bunch of counter spells, and I was like able to like make big flyers and then protect them with counter spells, and that was like kind of a nice plan. But it's a bit of a shaky deck, and obviously it's like highly reliant on getting like multiple copies of these things, and it's a bit slow, etc. So like it's not like the Smoky Lounge is at least not the card I want to pick early for this. Like I would rather have like the 2-mana 3/3 in blue. Like that was another card we were pretty high on, but because that's the card that enables you to play cards like Smoky Lounge and not be super punished for like spending all this mana, kind of like developing your kind of engine, but it's not really an engine because it just makes one thing and then you run out of stuff to do. Because you also need card draw to combine with this. Like the issue is that it asks you to have like early defense and card draw, and those are like really high picks, and so you kind of spend your early picks on those before you get the Smoky Lounge. Of course, I don't have the opportunity here to pick like early plays or card draw because like there's nothing in this pack. I do think you're supposed to pick Cautious Survivor because that was actually a card we were high on as we played more, even in these like more controlling green decks. So if I think I'm going to be like a teamer rooms, potentially, I think Cautious Survivor is still better than Smoky Lounge.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Pyroclasm is one I'm curious to pick your brain on.
Yeah, it's a good sideboard card, but it just like misaligns too often with the sizing of the creatures. I mean, it does hit like the Manifest Dread, and then like some red decks can't even play it because they get super hit by it themselves. So like if I was heading in a more controlling direction, let's say my Painter Studio and my Fear of Being Hunted were like, Meat Locker and what's it called, the Moldering Gym, I'm much more interested in picking the Pyroclasm then. But what I'm actually eyeing here is so this pack I actually don't consider like very many good cards. It's like a lot of there's like a Mountain Cycler, like whatever. I mean, I don't want that in my hyper aggressive red deck if that's the direction I'm heading. And there's a little bit of mana fixing, but towards white, I don't really need that at the moment at least. So I'm actually eyeing this Fear of Lost Teeth, and the only reason I think that this would be a reasonable pick here is because of the black cards I saw pick 3 and 4 that I passed on.
Yeah. That's so interesting, because it would mean that if someone would have put up a what's the pick here and just show what you've picked so far and this pack, all of the context that we've been talking about this whole time is not there.
Yeah, and there's even like the Turn Inside Out and the Diversion Specialist as like red cards I could like try and look to wheel.
Sure.
That's also been like on my mind, right? It's like these are highlight cards that usually wheels at a PT level draft because people underrate these red decks, at least at this PT, in the first draft. So like it's a lot of like pieces like that. And something that's really important when I am eyeing that type of strategy is that like this version of red black that is like super low curve, right? It's a very it is a very picky deck because there's a ton of red and black cards that it does not want to touch. Like both commons and uncommons. Because like if you say like your curve is going to end at 3, and there is even some 3-drops that are like just like too bad to put in your deck, that means that like at least like a third of the commons and uncommons you're just like not interested in at all. And so in order to make playables with a deck that is more picky, you have to actually like prioritize some of the cards that goes in that strategy specifically if you're considering it. So I'm picking this Fear of Lost Teeth, not saying that I'm for sure red black at the moment, but I'm saying that if I do end up red black, I need to make sure that I have at least spent some of my speculative picks on cards that go in this deck, because otherwise I could get in trouble for not having enough playables. And I think I end up with exactly enough playables, like 16 lands, and the third Fear of Lost Teeth actually goes in my deck. So like this ends up being important. It's like I wouldn't ideally want to play 3 Fear of Lost Teeth in this deck, but it's like kind of nice. And also it goes well in like a more controlling version of the red black deck. If I end up there, you can give it like you can give it Death Touch with the room that like draws 2 cards, and then you can give it Death Touch and sacrifice it and like kill something. And there's like some synergies, or like with the Sporogenic Infection, for instance, like it's a combo there. So it doesn't have 0 value if I'm not in this aggressive version of red black. But the other cards I can pick here are also like fairly low impact cards. And so I'd rather pick one
that's
at least like, because I have enough information that I think it's reasonably likely I end up red black here. And that's why I think I want to pick the good red black cards when I see them, or at least even the playable ones.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. The point on Pyroclasm being an okay sideboard card is really interesting, because in one of the few kind of high stakes drafts I did of this format, I found I got a little trapped because I didn't know how good some cards were as sideboard cards, because I'd spent too much time playing around on Arena.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it's definitely like, good to know. I mean, I wouldn't say it's an okay sideboard card. I would say it's a legit good sideboard card. But I just think like, it's like I think it's too much opportunity cost to give up a playable for a picky archetype that you're like. I would say at this point I'm probably 60% to end up red black, maybe 50. In that range, right? I'm really wanting to go here. Also, like part of that is preference, right? And I see another pack here that has the a couple lands and then a what is it, Fear of Immobility.
Yes. Yep.
And an acrobat. So I mean, we kind of consider the acrobatic cheerleader to be almost unplayable. But
Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
like you can put it in your deck. It's a grizzly bear, like it's like fine, but it's like really not what makes these red-white decks tick. And we realized that we're just supposed to like not pick it highly at all. And you can get them on the wheel and maybe it'll sneak into your deck. But yeah, it's like wasn't really the priority because like it's just like not, if you're trying to like defend this to like make it get flying, it's like not even like that good at flying. It's just like 2. I don't know, the power level of like of cards these days is just so much higher, and it's not particularly synergistic to what the red white deck wants to do. So the Fear of Immobility is actually one that we really like for white decks because it's like this way to kind of break through. Or sometimes you can obviously enable your what's it called, survival abilities. And it's just like you really want some top end in your red white decks. Like we also kind of like the land cyclers. And it was, I mean, a lot of times like you just end up running out of gas if you're too low on like a too low curve in red white because it doesn't have that much velocity. The red black deck has a lot of like velocity and ways to like churn cards. And like draw new cards, see more cards. So like that deck can get away with a lower curve than the red white deck can, which is much more reliant on like being able to push its creatures through, especially stuff like the Midnight Mayhem. Like it's a explosive card, but then it's also just 3/1/1s, and if the opponent has 2 manifests, it doesn't actually do that much, right? And so having these like top end cards that can push through your early drops is quite important for the red-white decks. And also we liked it a lot in blue-white. So I think that's a pretty close pick here as well. And I have picked up some red-white stuff, right? So I could potentially move into white here. The issue is, compared to black, I haven't seen as many signals that I should be going in that direction as I have. Yeah, so it's a little harder for me to do it. Whereas I could also pick up a mana fixing that kind of works with this like teamer thing that I've been highlighting that is still a potential option here.
And I guess the thing with the Fear of Immobility is that a card that others are likely to value the way that you are valuing it?
Yeah, that's a good point, right? I think that's like that's definitely a downfall potentially of like being on a strong team. I think since we like do a lot of like high level draft with also other PT drafters, we get a bit more sense of like exactly how cards are valued. And I do think like in those drafts, the Fear of Immobility is taken earlier than it would be on Arena, where you end up with them like a little bit more for free. So in some sense, but probably not to the quite full extent, right? Like I think people would probably value the immobility lower and the acrobat higher in this pack, on average, right? So there's definitely something there, right? It's to like not overvalue your own views of the format. It's a kind of a tricky thing when you're testing for PTs, is making sure that like not only knowing your own preferences, but also like having a sense of what the general preference is, so you can more accurately do your reads.
And there's another question I have for you in this pack, which is we've got the 2 different types of dual land here. We've got the Peculiar Lighthouse, which is the always tapped land, and the 13 life tapped land, and we've got the Thornspire Verge, one of the rare verges. In discussions with my group, we kind of categorize these into 3 categories. There's the tapped lands, there's the verges that have their primary color as your primary color, and there's the verges that have their primary color as your splash color, and the secondary color is your primary color.
Yeah, that makes sense.
How do you rank those together? Like, what's your priority in picking those up?
Yeah, I would probably rank them like verge that aligns, and then tap lands, and then verges that don't align, probably.
Yeah, interesting.
Maybe. I'm actually not sure. Like, I don't remember. I think I probably was doing like something else when we talked about the Virgins in Unlimited meeting, because that part is completely out of my mind here. I think it's realistic that if I take the cautionary survivor, whatever it's called, cautious survivor, over the Smoky Lounge, then I'm supposed to take the red-green Verge here.
Mm-hmm.
Because that kind of like goes a little bit better with that plan, and I think I should have abandoned the ship on blue at this point. You know, like to some extent, you can only like do the thing where like, you know, you shouldn't like react to the things you don't see. You can only take it so far. I've seen 7 packs now with like no indication that I should be blue.
Yeah. Okay, and then just snapping off the ragged playmate.
Yeah, it's actually not the red card I thought was going to wheel. I thought it was going to be Diversion Specialist, but I'm obviously happier to see a much more playable card. And again, like, you know, yeah, just like a card that can actually go in these decks. And here we see like this Winter's Intervention. I'm a bit more like cautionary picking it. I think it is a small signal that it is coming around this point, right? You could imagine it was kind of a weak pack, like some other black drafter would have picked it. Here we see the turn inside out. But actually, the Winter's Intervention in this style of aggressive red-black deck, I don't want to main deck it.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
yeah,
sure.
It's just a sideboard card for aggressive mirrors. Because it's just, like, in general, in aggro decks, you want your removal to be able to clear blockers, not to help you stay alive. And Winter's Intervention is much better than at one of those things than the other. But yeah, I also picked up the, like, you know, Razorkin there, the 5/3. Ideally, that doesn't go in my deck, but it's, like, on the verge of being a playable.
And the Balmerk Leech is probably not for the red-black deck either.
Yeah, it was actually kind of close to making my deck, because you do have a lot of enchantments and you're like pretty aggressive. So I think it can potentially make it. It's more playable, I think, than a Ripchain Razorkin, honestly. But yeah, the biggest thing there was honestly seeing the train inside out wheel. I mean, you know, I'm like solidly in red. I am not as like convinced that I'm supposed to be black yet. So I mean, we'll have to see. The main reason I'm not convinced is that I just don't have that many cards, and I know I passed 2 good black cards, so I potentially put someone else in black. So I could have like a pretty weak pack too. And so this is where like the fact that I like passed out on Fear of Immobility could potentially come back to haunt me. Kind of an on-theme use of imagery there. Because like, you know, what if the whites are flowing from the other direction, and you can kind of like have these drafts where you're like, it's not like white was necessarily open from, you know, coming from my left side there, but you can sometimes have these drafts where you just like one color from the left, another color from the right, and then back to the other color from the left, and you just end up with like main color and like support color. So in this case, it would be like I picked up a bunch of red in this pack. I'm gonna get a bunch of red in pack 3 most likely.
Yeah.
And then in pack 2, I could get all my white, and then that turns into a deck. So that's actually another way where, like, you know, you shouldn't necessarily overvalue the signals that like you're sending, because like even if you have 2 main red drafters next to each other, it can kind of be fine as long as you don't have, as long as you don't align in the secondary color.
Totally, and I feel like I've had more drafts like that in the Play Booster era than before. I don't know if that's a Play Booster thing or just a me changing the way I draft. But
that's a good question. Like it could be, but it might also be like just a draft evolution. Anyways, we see here in pack 2. And like, you know,
bunch of interesting red, right?
Yeah, so there's like an Irreverent Gremlin here, and then there's the Shard Foyer, which I hadn't gotten the memo is unplayable. So I was really I was hard struggling this pick. And I was like, I mean, it is a bomb, but like, how good is it actually? I mean, what if they kill it? I'm so far behind on like tempo in that case. The Gremlin is also very good. Okay, you know what? I think I'll be disciplined for the camera. I'll take the Gremlin here. That's what went through my mind here. And I look, the commentators don't even mention the chart for you. They're not, to them, it doesn't look like I'm considering it. Like, why would I be? But, no.
Is it the sort of card you could sideboard in if you find I suppose if you're the black red aggressive deck, that probably wouldn't happen. But
no, I think it could still happen actually. Yeah, it seems like a reasonable sideboard card. Like again, your curve is very low, so you're pretty well adept to like take advantage of it. But you just need to make sure your opponent can't like punish your tempo wise, and that there's such a deck where they don't beat you even if you draw 2 cards a turn. So like if they have a ton of like go over the top big things, you drawing 2 cards a turn, if it's like 2 shitters every turn, that's not necessarily going to help you, right? But if they're like blue-black control and they're just trying to hard attrition you, and their blockers are like 3 toughness max, then I think the Chart for you is a good sideboard card.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that was one that me and my group talked about a lot in our testing for some of the competitive events here. I maintained hard throughout that it was completely unplayable.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I think first picked it before and like, had it be okay. And yeah, well, I'm really, really happy that I picked the Gremlin here because it was honestly way too close. I also noticed a Final Vengeance, by the way. That's like one of those cards that is, obviously super nice in this pack. And then another card I want to mention here is the Ticket Booth. So I don't think that card is like super likely to wheel necessarily, but it's like we had it as one of the better red commons. I think maybe we had it as the 3rd best red common. I think.
Interesting. Okay, after Dragonfire and Glassworks.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so the reason is that it just like kind of like does a lot of things for different archetypes. It's a great enabler for like Delirium. It has the manifest stuff. It's like a really nice mana sink for the aggressive decks. You can win a lot of late games off the Tunnel of Hate. I even heard like Chris Larson talking about splashing it in his green-black decks just so that he had like mana sinks and ways to finish the game.
Wow,
then in these red-black decks, it does double duty. Because it's a creature that creates an enchantment you can sacrifice, so it's like sack fodder. And then the creature it creates is really good, actually, because you're a deck that has a bunch of cheap creatures that intertwine synergistically. And so manifesting is incredibly good in this deck because it's very cheap to flip up your manifests, and it helps you dig towards the synergy pieces, right? Like if you want your like sometimes you're digging for sacrifice outlets, and it can hit that like diversion specialist or whatever it might be, and sometimes you're digging towards the sack fodder and it can find that that clockwork percussionist. And so like this is in general the manifest dread cards I think are actually best positioned in the red black deck, which is kind of funny. In the beginning I thought that manifest dread means that you want expensive big bombs you can flip up and like surprise your opponent with. And I realized drafting the format more that expensive cards and manifest dread don't work that well together because it's so expensive to flip them up and just end up trading them off instead. Because if you have a lot of expensive cards in your deck, you probably also have expensive cards in your hand that you could cast instead of flipping them up, right? And so, but in these red-black decks, you run out of like things to do very quickly unless you have these cards that like you can. You at least like often have the extra mana to flip up stuff, is what I mean. So you actually don't run out of stuff that much because if you draft your deck right with stuff like the Gremlins and these manifest threats and other ways of drawing cards, Disturbing Mirth, etc.
That's so interesting. Yeah, that's so counterintuitive. I'd never really thought about it like that.
So yeah, anyways, very happy with Ticket Booth, and hopefully I get some in this draft. That's definitely it's like the three drop I most want.
The other card from that last pack, just before we move on, was the Spineseeker Centipede. Was that a consideration at all?
No, I think at this point I'm like candidly in the in the red aggro space, and in that space, Irreverent Gremlin is potentially the best common uncommon you could have.
Yeah. Okay.
So not really, but I think there's a different line where this draft goes, right? Where I pick the Cautious Survivor and I pick the red-green land, and like my lane is still open to red-green, and I don't open the Gremlin, and I'm gonna have to like kind of like agonize between the Centipede and the Final Vengeance. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, let's move on to...
I probably would have picked the Chart for you if I hadn't opened the Gremlin, to be fair. But because that's what it took, right? Is that the card had to be so good as Gremlin that I was like, I'm going to pass on the Mythic Rare.
That would have been amazing. Okay, be honest. Is there a small part of your brain that when you're on camera like this, there's a small part of you that just wants to throw a troll pick in just to send the community into confused spiral?
You see that a bit later. I almost picked a Party Demon. What's it called? The Doomsday Excruciator. Because it's in my standard deck, right? But I just like point at it. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, great timing.
That's great. I mean, I think at this point you're supposed to just put all of your picks in your sideboard and just take all black cards so you can play Excruciator in standard and draft, right?
That's also actually funny foreshadowing for my second draft.
Oh, all right, cool.
Put all the cards you drafted so far into sideboard and just draft mono.
Yeah.
But so Yes, so obviously Razorkin Needlehead is like one of the better 2-drops you could want. I'm a little low on 2-drops at the moment, right? I have the Ragged Playmate and the Baymare Leech, which I don't really want. So so that's like something that, now I'm like, oh, I have the Gremlin too, I guess. Like now I know that I'm in this space of red aggressive, right? So I need to be like kind of like starting to razor focus my picks, because otherwise I'm not going to end up with enough playables if I speculate too much from here on out.
Yeah, I mean, Razorkin Needlehead's probably pretty good at razor focusing things. How much of a concern is the double red? Because I hear different opinions on that. Some people really don't like it. Some people are okay. But I guess given that you're so heavy red, you're feeling okay playing 10 mountains anyway?
The version of red-black that I'm drafting is aiming to be 10 mountains, 7 swamp anyways. And so that's why like the Needlehead kind of like fits perfectly into that strategy. It's also very good with like turn inside out because it's a 2-drop with first strike. And so like I think it's kind of like almost it just forces me to draft the deck correctly.
Yeah. Okay.
It does make like it does make the Fear of Lost Teeth a little bit worse, but not by that much, because like that card is a fine play turn like 3 or 4, like whenever you need to like use it. Because like it's not like you miss out on that much damage anyways if you have to play Mountain turn 1. But yeah, obviously I would prefer to have Clockwork Percussionist over the Fear if I'm if I'm in this style of deck.
So you said from what you said a moment ago, it sounds like you want to play 17 lands in this deck that's capping out at 3.
Yeah, because you do have a lot of like cards, like, card selection and card flow. So I mean, I ended up playing 16 lands. I think it's kind of close between the two. It just depends a little bit on like like how your curve exactly ends up. So like in general, it's better if you can play more lands in your aggro deck, because like if you need to curve out, that means like needing to hit the first land drops without like spending any resources, like any tempo trying to like dig for those lands. And so yeah, the Irreverent Gremlin helps a lot too. Like the more stuff of like that you have to like do it away and like to spend lands in other ways, you can play more.
Yeah, true. Or you just play 41 cards and 17 lands. That works too.
Oh yeah, that works too. Yeah, that's actually a great advice. I've never thought of that.
Huh. You need to spend more time on draft punks, Simon.
Yeah, you're a pioneer, Sam. You know what? I'm gonna try and do that from now on.
There we go. I'm glad we're all learning something today.
Great. All right. So I take
I like the little tap of the excruciator.
Yeah. No, you definitely have to like mark it to let people know.
I'm sad that card's kind of dropped off in standard. That card's very cool.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've had like nightmare. I went like 0-4 in the last 4 rounds of standard in this tournament and missed top 8. I just needed to go 2-2.
Oh,
so
okay. We won't talk about that anymore.
Draft, but I went 2-6 in limited in constructed. I mean.
All right, this is the really interesting pick of the draft. I think we've got the Scorching Dragonfire, amazing in any red deck, and then the Disturbing Mirth, which is just the killer that puts you into black-red. Talk me through this.
Yeah, this is definitely a pretty tough pick, right? Because as I said, I don't have that much indication that I'm supposed to be red-black yet, outside of the pick 3 and 4 black cards I saw. And so the question is, how much do I hinge on my intuition around like this information that I've, think I've picked up? I mean, there was also the late like Winter's intervention, etc. Like there's a few more things like, I guess the Fear 7th pick is not really a signal, but I probably shouldn't count that as a signal at least. But there are like, some pieces there where you're like, it does seem most likely that I end up in that direction, more likely that I end up in red-white or red-green at this point. And so if that is the case, like it's just about like how much do I place that percentage at? And it's not like I sit with an actual like percentage calculator in my head, or even think of it as a percentage, but just I think of it as like more of a weight. Like, how much does red-black weigh in my potential future here compared to how much the other options weigh. And so if I am red-black, then Disturbing Mirth is going to be, I would say, significantly better than Scorching Dragonfire. I think this card is like one of your very best cards. And the reason is that it both does like it's like kind of it's a sacrifice like outlet, right? And so it's like part of a synergy piece. It does the manifest dread thing that I've already explained is great for these decks, and it's also a sacrifice fodder, right? So it's like it hits on like 3 angles there, and then it is card draw, and so that kind of like card flow is really important because your red decks are often like, if you don't have that, you're going to curve out, put them to 6, and die. So you need that extra like push to get over it. So like this card just hits on like 4 different tangents here, and this is why I think it's incredibly good in specifically red-black. Of course, if I'm anything but red-black, Scorching Dragonfly is miles better because that's unplayable versus like the best red common. So so it's kind of, I think maybe actually we maybe thought Glass Works worked better than Scorching Dragonfire. I think we had the arguments. I'm not actually sure. I might be imagining things there. But anyways, yeah. So Scorching Dragonfire obviously great in a lot of other things. But if I think at this point I am like 60 to 70% to be red black, something really important here is that I was talking about the ability to play your rares, and once again I missed on a rare in like these first few picks of pack 2. So I don't have that to steer my direction. So that means I have to put more weight on the on that like intuitive information that I kind of glean from the other pack in terms of what my second common should be. And so the clearest thing I've seen so far is the red-black thing. And I think really importantly, getting Disturbing Mirth third means that at least the person next to me is most likely not in red-black specifically. So I also have the avenue to potentially get a few more cards out of this pack if I go in that direction. So that's why I end up taking the Mirth here. But yeah, it's a close and tough pick. And I think honestly, there's like a way of drafting the seat where I end up red-white instead. And like it's gonna look a little bit worse because obviously, with the pack 3, for people who've seen the draft before, you'll know what's happening. For the rest of you, I guess I won't spoil anything yet. But it's like, the draft could have easily been where I'm like red-white, and then my deck is like just totally okay and fine with the way I'm drafting, and maybe even a more like disciplined way of doing it. But here I'm like kind of taking a shot at a higher upside.
Yeah, and this whole kind of conversation around this pick is it reminds me of something I talked about a lot early in Duskmourn, which was that the black-red deck seemed really powerful, but it also seemed hard to get into. Like it felt like it had less overlap with the other archetypes. So like it was really easy to end up in red-white because a lot of just those cards were generically good and they overlapped with the other decks. But at some point, if you wanted to be black-red, you needed to make this just like committal pick to take a Disturbing Mirth over a generically good card. Is there some truth to that, or am I kind of off the mark there?
No, I think that actually lines up pretty well. Because it is a bit of an oddball deck that like wants different cards. I mean, you can also draft red-black in a way where like you can take a murder and be happy about it, and then like draft the black control tools, and you were like red is the support color to your black-red deck. So like that one is a bit easier to end up in. If you're like accepting that you can draft black as a controlling deck, which I think was not even like that like black in itself has a control engine, which is not, I think a lot of people might not even have been agreeing with that.
Sure.
But yeah, in terms of like this more aggressive red black deck, then yeah, I agree. I mean, it's like mostly a red deck, right? So a lot of the good aggressive red cards kind of overlap, but it is true that like this is definitely like a pick that illustrates exactly what you're talking about, right? Of hard committing into something.
Yeah. I feel like that was possibly the one of the most pivotal picks here. Was you had the choice to keep staying open. You actually said no. I think I'm actually going to go for this.
I should add that I'm not hard committing here.
Okay.
I mean, I'm getting close, right? But my way of drafting, it's like, I said I was like, 60, 70, like the chance of like me being red black is like rising by like the picks. And this Disturbing Mirth puts me at like probably 80 to like 85, 90. This Sportgenic maybe puts me at like 90, but I'm still not like I am 100% red black.
Yeah.
And the reason is just because I haven't seen like that clear signal that my pack 3 is gonna go great if I do that. I have like just a idea of it. But yeah, I guess like this infestation combined with the disturbing mirth, or infection, sorry, kind of like is is a lot of the is a lot of like pull into being red black. So it would take a lot of things to pull me out. But if I get a lot of like good cards of a different color going late, like let's say I get a bunch of good white cards late, I could pick those up, and then if in pack 3 I open a white bomb, I could still pivot.
And I think what's so interesting to me about this, I think what I'm learning the most about this is the fact that you were leaning so heavily black that you would consider taking, and did take, Disturbing Mirth over Scorching Dragonfire, was based not even that much on the black cards that you'd taken, but just from the fact that you'd picked up on that signal in pack 1.
Yes.
So it's not even about what's in your pool. It was just about the trend that you'd noticed. That's really interesting and really important.
Yeah, now I finally get that sporogenic infection that I passed up on in pack 1. An incredible card, I think, for the starter deck. Because like it's obviously removal, but also sacrifice fodder, and it enables your Fear of Lost Teeth to be like excellent. And
yeah.
You're just a deck full of like small shitters. I'm gonna use that word again. And so you put this on their 4/4, make them sacrifice the other 4/4, and then you attack with your team. And then, like, I guess they have to trade their 4/4 for your 2-drop. And that's just incredible.
Yeah, and I felt like it was fairly underrated for a lot of the format as well. Perhaps it was your draft at Worlds that kind of clued people in, but I felt like it was not appropriately valued for a long time.
Yeah, it might possibly be one of those things where I'd read it as a signal from the like pack 1 where it should have not necessarily been seen as a signal to get it. Like I think it was like what 4th pick, right? That I saw it, and here again I get it 4th pick, right? And so maybe maybe it is actually that that like people just like didn't like it as much, and I got a little bit lucky there because there could have been a black drafter who just took a different black card over it, and I just like because they valued it differently. So, but yeah, that luckily didn't happen. There was no black drafter in that direction.
I mean, I would have thought that Worlds drafters would understand how good it was, but at least in the pleb queues that I hang out in, it was not valued as highly as it should have been.
Again, the Worlds drafters are going to be closer to that like understanding, right? So, but it might have not been fully there.
Yeah. So another really interesting moment. You've been talking about how there was a chance you could have been red-white, maybe was supposed to be red-white, and here you get 5th pick Midnight Mayhem, along with a kind of okay medium mono red card. What's going through your mind here?
Okay, so I think the main difference maker here is that I think Violent Urge is not an okay medium card. I think it's an actively good card that I want in any of my aggressive red decks, or at least these red-black decks. Because like in general, actually the Delirium cards work really well in red-black because you're quite good at moving cards into the graveyard through manifesting dread, sacrificing enchantments, and like this, you have the Reveling Gremlin to discard your lands, or like maybe the Razorkin to sacrifice your lands. Like it's like, or Charmorphic Expanse in some versions of red-black is really good. So like it's not that hard to achieve Delirium. You also have artifact creatures, and it's not that hard. And you are often on the lookout of like ways to finish a game. And so combining Turn Inside Out with Violent Urge is one way where you can just close out a game, which is actually what happens in my round 1, I think. Combined with that Clown that like gives unblockable. I think I do on the puppet that gives unblockable. I think I give unblockable to the Vicious Clown, and then like pump that up and do Violent Urge, and I kill them from like 14 or so. And like the upside of that on a trick that is also like close to playable as just a Kindle Fury, because like you just like 1-mana tricks are just nice in this archetype, and then sometimes it kind of lines up with the sizing of the creatures. Like you have this, again like the Violent Clown, I think it's called, right? The 3-drop. It's like that's one thing that can like get pretty big. You could also have like the menace creatures. There's quite a few menace creatures in red black, and it goes really well to combine First Strike with menace creatures, like Hand That Feeds, for instance. So so a lot of things to like about the Violent Urge, and actively just like want one in my deck. So that makes this pick much tougher. Because if it was just a medium okay card, I would probably have picked a Midnight Mayhem of a similar reason that just like I could still have that door be open and I'm not giving up that much. But because I think I'm actually giving up something substantial here, I end up with the Violent Urge.
So I think the only reason I've thought the Violent Urge was medium okay was just because it's not as good as Turn Inside Out. So if you're in a position where you've got say 4 slots where you can dedicate to these combat tricks, would you rather have 4 Turn Inside Out or 3 Turn Inside Out and 1 Violent Urge?
I would definitely have 3 and 1. And
yeah, okay.
I think I might even want 2 and 2 if I had the opportunity to, because they combine so well together.
Right. Okay.
I think I wouldn't want to have 4 Violent Urge, because I do agree with you. The first Turn Inside Out is better, but it's kind of like nice to have a mix of options. And especially when they cut, like, you know, Turn Inside Out plus Turn Inside Out is not just much of a combo as like Violent plus Turn.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, I think, important to keep in mind.
That's very interesting. Yeah. Okay. Great.
But yeah, and it did win me an unwinnable game. Like, my opponent was fully stabilized, had just cast what's it called, like the like X spell that like manifests X times and put counters on them.
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah, the Valgavod's Onslaught.
Yeah.
They just cast that and then they died because of Violent Urge. Like,
okay.
This is, you know, that's the like power level this card provides, and that's why, you know, like, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of like looking with optimism and looking for the upsides, but it's kind of important to keep an eye out for like those upsides and accept a little bit of risk there. And here we see a classic pick for this archetype. I actually had that already in my team draft, or like my in-house draft on a couple days before this Pro Tour, where like I'm already in this heavy red deck. I can pick between Murder and Hand That Feeds, and Murder is obviously the much better card. But my deck is like heavy red. I have the Razorkin Needlehead, again, guiding me towards the right pick. And red-black already has a lot of avenues for cheap and efficient removal, and it's not actually that interested in playing 3 mana for a non-synergistic piece of removal.
Yeah.
So that, combined with the fact that it's really tough on the mana base, and that I've already highlighted that like the Delirium is fairly easy to achieve, and then the Hand That Feeds is a great 2-drop in this deck. Like, you know, you flip over your Manifest Threat and it's a Hand That Feeds and they die. That's actually how I died in on day 2, I think. In like one of the games I lost was that exact scenario happening. And like if they have like the ticket booth, like the whatever it's called, Tunnel of Hate, just making it like 8 power unblockable. So yeah, this I think honestly, like, now I don't think this pick is very close at all, but it might seem a little bit close on the surface, and it's like pretty important to keep an eye out for the context of like what these deck want. And this is what I mean by my deck is picky, because I don't want to put Murder in my deck.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I mean, like you said, and especially when you're in black-red, right? When you're in black-red, you have access to Final Vengeance, Scorching Dragonfire, Glassworks, and I'd take any number of those over Murder. Like, Murder in some sets has been really premium, but in this set was just a little bit outclassed, I guess. Like you say, it's not synergistic with anything. It was
I actually like Murder, though. I will say, but in a different style of black deck, right?
Okay, sure.
Yeah, so if you're I know that's a little bit contradictory to what I just said. I don't think Murder is a bad card. I think it is like one of the better black commons, and you actively want them in these, like, you know, Sultai or like green-black, blue-black style decks. They have, or even red-black if you're the black-heavy version. I think it's good there too. Because you just want some hard removal to like combine with your card advantage. But yeah, this deck just wants different things.
That's I think one of the big level ups that a limited player can have is going from thinking of cards as good versus not good to thinking of cards as good in certain decks versus less good in other decks. And now I feel like you're talking about a level deeper than that, which is Murder is good in black-red if you're the black leaning version of that deck, and it's not good if you're in the red, or not as good in the red leaning version.
No, I think it's legit like a good card versus an unplayable card. Like I think the difference is massive in the two different versions of red black. And so yes, that is quite important to keep in mind. That like because like the color pairs aren't just like one scripted thing you can do. There's a lot of like maneuverism within them. I also talked about like this blue red like control rooms deck, and then I talked about blue red piranha fly, and that's like it's completely like different style of blue red, where like the picks the change and the like painter's gallery actually makes sense, which it doesn't really in the other version. And so the important bit there is just like not only drafting the colors, but drafting like the coherent decks within like the cards that are available to your color. Because like there's also a lot of cards like the hand that feeds is a really bad card in the red black version, the black based version of the deck. So it actually changes a lot. Like that card is almost unplayable in the black version because you're trying to control the game and grind them out, and you don't care about a 2/2 that maybe is a 4/2 sometimes.
Yeah, wow, that's fascinating. Is that something that you and the team kind of actively explore, or is that just something that kind of comes naturally out of drafting a lot?
No, it's definitely something that we voice. That like this awareness of like different archetypes are available. I think a lot of my teammates are a little bit less willing to engage in like those things than I am. Because there's like a lot of focus on like the best things. And I do think it's really important to know what the best things you can do is. I think the red version of the red black deck is the better version than the black version. So if I had to choose, I would lean towards the red. But sometimes you're in that seat and you have the gold cards, but you also have a red white player passing to you, and like you're not going to get the red cards. And the ability to still make something work out of the other cards that you're seeing is pretty important. So yeah, definitely like something we talk about and like highlight if we see someone like drafting a deck in a different way than we thought was possible. And also voice when we rate the card and we're like, yeah, keep in mind that this goes well in these styles of decks, but it's bad in these other styles of decks.
That's really interesting. That gives me something kind of really, really good to work towards. In the next format, having that sort of nuanced awareness. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's nice. And there's also, of course, the whole like like what happens if you add a third color to things, and yeah, it's
sure. Yeah.
And there's probably even some levels where like you can even like be different styles of red based versions of the red black deck potentially. So because like Magic is just so like deep in like the ways you can combine cards. And here we see like one of the cards I want the most at this point, Clockwork Percussionist.
Yeah. I think you're happier to see this than anything else at this point.
Yeah, like basically like my deck, I have like some like kind of like nice indications towards the red black, but I'm really hinging on my third pack here because right now I don't have any final vintages. I don't have any ticket boots unless the one wheels from before. I don't have that many. Like this is my second 1-drop. Like these cards are incredibly important for building up the deck. I have like 4 2-drops now, so I'm like okay, but need more as well. And the issue is that my deck is picky. So if I got unlucky and the cards that I want aren't in the packs, I could get really punished here. So yeah, that's why you just gotta like whenever you see the playable cards, you just gotta pick them up and be very, very happy with them.
And that's not an uncommon place to be when you're doing one of these. I get color 1 in packs 1 and 3, and color 2 in just pack 2. You do end up really kind of crossing your fingers that pack 3 is going to deliver.
Yeah, exactly. And here we, by the way, see what I talked about. It's like there was a bunch of like nonsense in that pack, and then there was a card for like if I end up white anyways, like I get some late white cards here. So I'm just gonna like pick up on those and see if that ends up taking me somewhere if I open like a great white card in pack 3.
I'm a big fan of using these kind of dud packs to just give yourself an out. If you open Overlord of the Mistmoors or whatever. How did you like Cracked Skull in these kind of decks?
Well, so good in the black version, sidebar card in the red version. It has the same upside as the Sporogenic infection, where you can use it to break through big blockers. So if your opponent has like, these like big dumb green blockers and some bombs that are actually problematic for you, you can like play this on their like Cautious Survivor and take their bomb and attack through, or sacrifice your Fear of Lost Teeth and like get rid of their blocker that way. But the black-based version that is a lot more around like using the Fear of Lost Teeth defensively, it gets incredible because you could just like kind of moat the opponent where they can't even attack into a stupid 1-drop because you have this card and you disrupted their whatever good thing.
Yeah. Oh, that's good to hear. Yeah, I was always my co-host Adrian mocked me endlessly for thinking that card was playable.
Oh yeah, it is. Well, like most things are playable.
No, we can't have nuance like that.
Except Living Phone.
Living Phone is so bad.
Here, just pick up like another Winter's Intervention for my sideboard in case I meet like a red-white player.
Yep, and the Bear Trap. Is that something you would main deck? Probably not in an aggressive deck like this.
No, probably not in like ideally any deck.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like you could use it because it's a Delirium Enabler.
Yeah,
you're like kind of like short, but ideally you wouldn't even have that in your green black deck. That's like the only thing I would want to play it is green black.
I could never be you in this situation. I would be picking up those stamped full art lands and you.
Yeah, that is a punt.
I'm glad we can see eye to eye on this. All right, so end of pack 2. Are we feeling like we've got strong potential and we're really just like crossing our fingers that pack 3 delivers? Is that kind of how we're feeling now?
Yeah, I mean, I took a risk, right? The way like this has been drafting, I relied on like kind of a weak signal and hoping that was like the packs not having that many red black cards, but a few, and then like the cards that came through to me were specifically like the black cards, right? I did see that there was a lot of good red. I am like confident that I will get more red cards here. But again, the pack could just not have that many good red cards. And then if black was actually not as open as I thought, I could be punished, right? But that's the thing to remember with like these play boosters is that it's so like it's very possible that you can just break not like a single pack, but like an entire like 8 packs. Like that can happen.
Yeah.
And that also it can both happen like late in the draft where like you just like don't get any red cards from like pack 3, even though it's completely open. But it can also happen in pack 1 the same way, where like no one at the table gets black cards because all the black cards suck in the first pack. But it's actually really open. And so like picking up on the few black cards you do see, that's why it's really important to keep an eye out for those. And so that's the story it's in my head right now, is that black is open, but there weren't that many good black cards in last pack. And as we see, I think that I kind of bore through. I don't exactly remember what the people passing to me were. I think it was blue-green passing to me, and don't quite remember what the person on the other side was. Maybe blue-white, I think. So yeah, I think like my positioning here is like kind of nice as far as I remember.
So as you're going into pack 3, do you usually try to have like a priority list of things that you're looking for? And if so, what is it at the moment for this deck?
Yeah, I realize now, by the way, it's blue-white and blue-green passing to me. Okay. So, because I played against both of those players. Yeah, so, like, I kind of, like, make up a mental priority here. Because my deck is, as I said, it's missing a little bit of removal, specifically Final Vengeance. It's missing, like, it has, like, 2-drops and then a couple 1-drops, but I want more 1-drops, and I want 3-drops, specifically Vicious Clown and Ticket Booth. Because those are the only 3-drops that I find playable. At common, right? So it's a bit tough being picky and also just missing the thing that you're being picky about. And here we actually see a really like interesting pack between. It doesn't have that white bomb that I was talking about, but it does have a trap in the screen. And the only card for red or black here is like a turn inside out that will most likely wheel.
Yeah. Yeah, this is you're not really kind of living off your first picks in this draft, are you?
I really am not. No, I'm living off the gifts I get received. But yeah, so this is one where I think I don't need to have made that many picks different before you take the trapped in the screen here. And again, I would be thinking I am not 100% red white or red black. Like, I would still be unsure which of the two I am. But the reason I end up picking Turn Inside Out here and just stay like committed to my vision is that the pack also has another card I want to wheel, which is Saw.
I was about to say, is it Saw?
Yeah. It is the Saw. Because that's another sacrifice outlet. It's a mana sink and it's card flow, and it's a delirium enabler because it gets lands in the graveyard. So Saw actually plays up really well in this archetype, and like you equip it to like your 1/1s and then attack through like a lot of their blockers, and it's like so awkward for them. So like I kind of like having one Saw in these decks, and because I know I'm a little bit on the risk of not having enough playables here, planning out your pack so that you can receive 2 playable cards out of the same pack is really important. And that's why I take the Turn Inside Out here. Because if I am in red-black, which again is significantly more likely than white, I can't like pass up on these opportunities to get enough playables in my deck. And I actively want this Turn Inside Out. I mean, danger scenario is if the pack comes back and it doesn't have the Turn Inside Out or the Saw. Like that would be, the worst thing in the world. And so I kind of like do a bit of damage control by taking the Turn Inside Out here.
Yeah, Saw became something of a late favorite of mine late in the format because, like you say, like it keeps the cards flowing, and then it goes so well with Clockwork Percussionist and just the other random shitters that you're happy just to throw into the red zone.
Yeah,
and trade
exactly.
off.
It also doesn't table out of this pack, so.
I was gonna ask, is it a given that it does actually wheel out of this kind of table?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought it was, but apparently it wasn't.
Interesting, yeah. I also started to like it in blue-white because you can pair it with Gremlin Tamer or Glimmerlight or anything that's just pumping out the little Glimmer tokens and start to turn all of them into cards, and you put the Saw on the 1/1s and force them to trade off as well. So I came up and up on this as the format went on.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, cool. Good little Saw.
So probably not the pack you are hoping to open, but I like that you've got a plan for both times that you'll see the pack.
Yeah, like, the upside of picky decks is that, like, you obviously can't be a picky deck where all the cards you're picky about is all the top commons. Because like, that doesn't work, because we're not going to see all the top commons.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an arena thing. But
sure.
So, like, the upside is that you do, like, you care a lot about the picks that other people don't care about, and you get them late. And so then, that's why you can do this, like, this planning of things that wheel is really important when drafting picky decks. And then
we get this nuclear bomb of a pack.
Yes. Yeah, it's actually
Undead
like
Sprinter, Clockwork Percussionist, Fear of Missing Teeth, Ragged Playmate. What's going through your head?
Well, I'm really happy that I'm going to get to wheel a playable out of this pack. And I'm also happy to take an Undead Sprinter here. And like I feel like definitely like, thank you for that my like, belief came true here. Because it is like, another way to like get rares. Like obviously there's the like draft fixing and see what you open in pack 2 and pack 3. Another thing is like if you read your table really well, which again I arguably didn't, but I got lucky here. That's possible. That I overreacted to some small signals. But if I did read this like well, and it just so happened that my guess was correct, there was no other red-black drafters, then you can also get rares that way, right? You can get the gold rares or the rares that are very specific to like specific archetypes late. Like Razorkin Needlehead would be another one that would kind of like travel around the table and get to me if it was open like 6 picks away, right? Because so many decks don't want that card.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it just happens to be Undead Sprinter this time, which is excellent for what I'm trying to do. Especially if I can pick up a bit more sacrifice outlets. I don't actually have much of that right now.
Is there even a chance that the Sprinter itself wheels?
That's a good point, right? Like you could actually argue for like let's say there was a Final Vengeance in this pack. It's actually very possible I'm supposed to take the Vengeance right now and try to wheel the Sprinter because I kind of want both cards anyways. I think that Clockwork Percussionist is probably just like a bit under what I am aiming for. But you might be right, actually. It might actually be correct to take the Percussionist here. Like at that point, I'm really putting faith in like everything, right? And if I
yeah.
take the Sprinter, I'm probably going to wheel a Fear of Lost Teeth. So I'm downgrading my 1-drop, but guaranteeing that at least this doesn't go wrong.
Sure, yeah. Is the Sprinter a card that's always good in these kind of decks? Because I never seem to get it to work as well as you made it work in this deck. Like, what are the other pieces that you really want to have around it?
Like something that's worth noting is, like, for instance, it's not a combo with Final Vengeance, because you sacrifice the Sprinter and then exile their creature, and then you can't bring back the Sprinter. But I think like having, like, first of all, Manifest Dread and stuff like Irreverent Gremlin, like ways you can put the Sprinter into the graveyard the first time, so that you don't have to like spend your mana on a 2/2 haste that you're trying to get rid of actively. It's much more mana efficient to just get it in the graveyard in other ways. And then, like, if you're a deck that is aggressive enough that can force trades, the Sprinter gets a lot better. Because the advantage of Sprinter, especially once it has a counter, is the opponent can never trade with it. And so the better you are at pushing damage, the like more rewarded you get for, like, you know, like pushing the damage in with the Sprinter, and the opponent is kind of like stuck in this thing where they can't ever block it. And also, like, the cards like Sporogenic Infection works incredibly well with it, because it's obviously it's not a thing that just triggers it if it's in your graveyard, but it's also a way that, like, you know, you put it on the thing with 4 toughness. That's the thing that could, like, kind of beat the Sprinter, but then now it doesn't beat it anymore because they would have to trade.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, because I guess it, in one sense, it looks like it might be a good mid-range value tool. You know, you load up on removal spells and then keep getting your Sprinter back. But I think what you're saying makes a lot more sense. If you just force them into awkward positions where they need to trade off, they need to block, and it itself is a 2-mana 2/2 trample ace, so that does seem like a better home for it.
Yeah, the nice part about it is that it does also it also can play in these ways where you, like, block with it and then, like, trade something else and you can get it back. But again, it's really hard to trade on your turn if you're not pressuring them. And actually, like, my second round 2 game is, I think, second game, I think it was a like really cool version of this, where my opponent played a turn 5 what's it called, distillation tool, the like they're like Battle Scroll type thing, right? And they're blue-white deck, and they're just like complete control of the game, and I cannot like aggro them. And sadly, the early parts of this game is cut out because it took a long time. Because that was also like kind of an interesting thing. But I realized that the only way I win this game is by, like, literally trading with every single creature they have. And at the same time, for that to work and for me to use my Sprinter that way, I have to also pressure them enough so they're forced to, like, put blockers in front of my creatures. It was very tough, a very tough game. But yeah, so you can see actually even consider the percussionist here. Like, you know, can I potentially wheel it? But just like we talked about.
Yeah, it's like one of these situations where you get not a whole lot for multiple packs in a row, and then everything you need in one pack.
Yeah, exactly. So it's but I think, honestly, if there hadn't been a Fear of Lost Teeth in that pack, I think you might be right that the correct pick is to pick percussionist there.
Yeah, right. Interesting. Yeah. I mean, and yeah, it always takes a big deep breath to, oh, there we go. Always takes a big deep breath to be willing to do that sort of thing.
There is both the ticket booth that I've been, like, clamoring for. There's a Fear of Being Hunted, which is an even better 3-drop, and then there's also this Final Vengeance. And I think at this point, you know, I'm hoping I could maybe wheel the ticket booth, but the other one didn't wheel that I know earlier, right? So I'm not having my hopes up for that. And the Final Vengeance is just like, I'm missing a bit more, like, sacrifice, like, outlets right now, and I'm missing removal, and so it's just kind of like both in one.
Yeah. You want cheap cards, you want removal, you want sacrifice synergies. It's kind of got everything you want at this point.
Yeah, so I gotta pick up the Vengeance here, but yeah, this is it is boding a bit well, right? Because it's like this abundance of, like, you know, cards for me, and like hopefully the packs keep being, like, at least rich enough in cards for my deck that are opened, because I'm pretty sure they'll get to me. Because it does seem like, you know, I'm in a good spot here, and yeah, definitely thinking that the situation worked out in that way, where my read was correct.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so another...
another percussionist, another sprinter.
And
like,
another fear of lost teeth.
What? Yeah. Yeah, so actually similar logic again, where at this point it's also like, it's a little bit too, like, there's also the Razorkin Horde Caller, actually, yeah.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that card is like worse than percussionist in my archetype, I think.
I would agree with that, yeah. Would you take it over fear of lost teeth?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. So, yeah, something that you are willing to play in this deck, even though you want your curve to stop at 3, but you're not going to take it over.
I mean, you could play that, like, if that's your only 5 or 4, it's probably fine.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. But yeah, would never take it over any of the premium options.
But yeah, here it's like just a little bit too, like, now it's pick 4, right? So it'll be pick 12 when I get the pack back. It's just a little bit too likely that someone will hate pick the sprinter or something. So, but,
yeah.
So, or even there is a second red black at the table, right? I can't control what's happening, like three places to my left here. So,
yeah. Is grab the prize something you're interested in now that you've got 2 undead sprinters?
Oh, that's actually a good point. That kind of combines well. I think no. If it comes back, I could see myself playing it. Yeah. It kind of like, it's like on the edge of like the pickiness there, because it is card flow, which I do want, and in general, like, I'm not too, like, opposed to playing tormenting voices in aggro decks. I think it is a little bit dangerous because you can't have too much spending mana to draw cards without also affecting something else in this style of deck. So, like, Disturbing Mirth is a much better way of, like, drawing 2 cards, because it also, like, sometimes even triggers some death triggers that you're interested in, and then also leaves behind this thing that is better. So it's like much more mana efficient, because when you sacrifice the Mirth, you kind of get back that mana that is invested into it. Whereas grab the prize, you'd never get that mana back, right? You spend the 2 mana to draw the 2 cards, and that could potentially lead you to either fall behind on tempo or not get far enough ahead on tempo to capitalize on the cards you're drawing. Again, like, it's the thing where if you just, like, even if you draw 2 cards a turn, it might not be enough to beat your opponent if they have actual good cards. So
yeah. And so then this pick, we get your option at another Final Vengeance and the Vicious Clown you were talking about before.
Yeah, and so, I mean, I would also love to have the Vicious Clown, but the second Vengeance is like, maybe if the Clown here was a ticket booth, it might have been close, but I think, given that I have 2 sprinters now, I probably should just take the Final Vengeance regardless, and just, like, shore up, like, my whole removal suite and my sacrifice stuff. And then, like, once I take this, I am noting that I do need a little bit more fodder, so I'm looking for, like, more percussionist and those ticket booths. Like, those are the only things on my mind right now.
So your opening pack in pack 3 was a little bit of a dud, and then since then you've picked up 2 undead sprinters, 2 Final Vengeance.
Yeah. And so it did get lucky in the sense that the packs did contain the good cards, right? There's definitely a scenario where there's no Final Vengeances opened by anyone at the table, and that would be, that's the risk you run, right? In the play booster era, you can't control everything. Here,
sure, but I mean that was a calculated risk, right? Like you made decisions early on in the draft based on a reasonable likelihood that you could get a set of packs like this in pack 3.
Yeah, exactly. That's at least, it's not like what I really like about this feature draft. This is, by the way, my first actual feature draft, right? The other time I had to, like, reconstruct my packs. This time it's easy. But what I really love about, like, this feature draft and the kind of the show that was put on here is that, I mean, I just look incredibly smart, which is always nice. It's just, like, there's a lot of uncertainty there, and there's, like, an argument that I'm not even, like, being correct here, but it looks like I'm just, like, a visionary. And so, so that's always
I mean, that is nice, right? Yeah, because there's a way this goes where we get to the end and the commentators are saying, wow, how did Simon Nielsen train wreck this hard? But
exactly, yeah.
I'm a big believer in trying to steer discourse away from discussions of luck, because obviously there was a way that this didn't work out, but it's not like you were doing things at random and then happened to get lucky, right? Like, you made conscious picks and decisions because you expected that exactly this had a reasonable chance of happening, right? You set yourself up to take advantage of this.
Yes, I do agree. I will add, though, that I think it is pretty healthy to remember that just because it went right didn't mean you did right.
True.
And
Sure. Yeah.
so just like have this like still make sure that like you're double checking your work and like thinking about like which things were maybe like too risky, and so that because the issue is that there's a chance that I repeat this way of drafting for the next like 5 years, and it could potentially actually cause harm to my PT draft if I'm not aware of like if it's actually wrong to do so.
Mm.
And so it's just like a mental note of like it worked out well this time. It will probably work out well next time, but it's not guaranteed that I was actually right in the first place.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I keep like adding these things of like possibly this was smartly done, but I'm not actually sure because the game is complex enough that I am actually not sure whether this was good drafting or not.
And that's saying something, right? When someone who, with as much experience and practice as you, and with a team around you as good as you have, that you can still have that degree of uncertainty.
Yeah, no, it's just. I mean, we also only have a couple of weeks to learn each limited format. I mean, the next one here we have literally like 10 days from the arena release to the PT, right? Like we're not gonna learn all the answers in this time. And the funny thing is that like the way like my engagement with Magic is, I don't really engage much with the format after the PT either, so I don't get to like refine these things as much.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah.
which maybe I should actually do. Like, it would be kind of. But the issue is that then, like, where would I do that? Like on Arena, like the issue is it's a very different thing because we're just training for a specifically a PT draft, and it's so different than the Arena ranked. Like that's like there's also a lot of skill involved in the Arena ranked. Like you can definitely improve there, but it's a very different task that we set forward. So I don't know if I could just have like 2 limited Grand Prix like right after the Pro Tour, that would be awesome. That would be a way that I could like iterate on this thing.
Well, look, if you are looking for a serious challenge after the PT, just come join me and Adrian on Punks, and you're going to have to figure out how to draft when we first pick Niv Mizzet.
That's fair. That's fair.
It's a whole new challenge for you.
Or draft the Doomsday Crusader.
That would happen. I never got to do that. I'm so bummed.
Well, I mean, you're not supposed to cast it, but you can reanimate it, and then it's very good.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm definitely happy to pick up a Trial of Agony here. Just like even more removal, and it's super efficient. Just very good in these aggressive decks.
So, is that your ticket booth? There's your ticket booth.
That is my ticket to victory. Big sigh of relief. It's like pick 7, right? So it's like if the other one doesn't wheel, then like this is my last chance to get one. And now I have one, and I'm like satisfied. I would like another, of course, but like you can't be too greedy here.
Yeah. Is this the kind of set? Oh, sorry. Is this the kind of deck where you have particular? Oh, just get another one. Just get another one.
Yeah, I just set it up. I knew it was going to happen.
Is this the kind of archetype
where you want a particular?
Is this where you kind of set aside certain cards that are going to go in certain slots, if that makes sense? So you're not going to take certain 4-drops, like you said before. You're not going to take the most valuable Slayer because you want Diversion Specialist in that slot, and so you just won't bother with most valuable Slayer. Is it a little bit like that with the 3-drop slot as well?
Kinda. I don't even remember what the other 3-drops are though. It's like Ticket Booth and Vicious Clown, and then the like uncommon multicolor one. And I think those are the only playable 3-drops. Oh, there's also the one that drains them when you sacrifice stuff in uncommon. Like
yes.
So it's not I'm not taking the other ones because they're worse than the other options. I'm not taking the other ones because they're literally stone bricks. I don't want them in my deck in the first place. I'd rather not have a 3-drop than have, I mean, whatever it is, the black common 3-drop is. It's probably something bad.
I remember that was a big takeaway that I took from one of the other videos that we did, where you knew that you wanted card X in a particular slot, and you knew you would see 1 or 2 of them through the draft, so you just didn't pick other cards that were going to go in that slot.
Yeah, exactly. I think in general, like having these like recipes. By the way, that wheel there, I got the 2 Fears, and then I got the Vicious Clown, which was complete gift, like 13th pick. It actually wheeled out of that pack.
Oh yeah,
and you can see me there, like I was, big sigh of relief because like my deck was like kind of like not really getting there on playables in pack 2, and I really had to like hope pack 3 went well. And it was a dream, right? It's the perfect pack 3.
So let's pop a picture of the final deck up now.
Mm-hmm.
How happy are you with this? Is this kind of a version of the deck that is this kind of where you hope to be?
I think for the most part, yes. So the ideal version of the deck doesn't contain Undead Sprinter. That's the like dream version of the deck. So
wow, okay,
right. So that's like a nice part of it, but it also has like the 1-drop slots has 1 Clockwork, 3 Fears. I would have loved for that to be swapped, and I would have loved for some of the sacrifice creatures. So like I don't quite remember the name of them, but I just mentioned the uncommon 3-drops and the 4-drop diversion specialist. Like I would have liked 1 or 2 of those types of cards that act as sacrifice outlets. And I think that was also a 2-drop, right? I don't quite remember. But some of that would have been very nice because I do have an amount of what's it called, Manifest Dread to try and like find these creatures, and so like it would have been nice to get get them so I could actually dig for them with my Manifest Dread. But I think this is like kind of like hitting on like it looks like my recipe for the deck. Like I have 4 1-drops. That's like I want like 3 to 5 1-drops. It has like 6 2-drops, which is about what I want. Like you don't want too many because like at some point they get outclassed. And like it has 3 4-drops, and it's like a 4 3-drops. There we go. With like a Fear of Being Hunted, it's really good. 2 Ticket Boots and a Vicious Clowns. Like these are good 3-drops. And like that's like kind of the curve that I envision. Like you don't really want to you can maybe play a 5th 3-drop, but you don't want too much more than that. It doesn't have the 4-drop as well, so like the curve is a little lacking in the top end, but not by that much. It also have the 2 boots, and then I have like a bunch of removal spells that are cheap, and I have the Disturbing Mirth, and so it kind of like has these and it does have these ways of having velocity. This thing I keep keep mentioning, right? It has the Mirth, the Gremlin, the Ticket Booth, like in terms of the other side of the room. It has the Painter's Hall,
Painter Studio, yeah.
Painter Studio, yeah. So like it has these elements that I want in the deck. It's not fully perfect, but it's like mostly exactly where I want to be. It just like would have liked some Clockwork Percussionists over the Fears, honestly.
Sure, yeah. How much do you like Trial of Agony in these decks?
I think it's really good. I mean, it's worse than like Final Vengeance, but it's probably better than Dragonfire. Probably.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, like in these decks, yes, I think so, because it's like 1 mana to remove 2 blockers for the turn. It's like so much tempo, and like Scorching Dragonfire has the issue where it like as I said earlier, you want your removal spells in your aggro decks to remove blockers, and Scorching Dragon you don't want to remove the creatures that trade with yours because you're presumably trade more efficiently. But you want the ones that actually block and break your creatures. And so that might be a 4 toughness creature, and Scorching Dragonfire can't hit that. And then in this deck, it has the additional like awkward upside of exiling it, which makes your undead sprinters not be able to come back. So
that's really funny.
But obviously, like in the first pack, in all of pack 1, I assume I would take Scorching Dragonfire over the what's it called, Triumph.
Yeah.
Every time in pack 1, I Trial of Agony. Yeah. I would pick Scorching Dragonfire over Trial like anytime during pack 1. Because in most other red decks, the Dragonfire is better. But as soon as I know I am this version of red, the Trial just like shoots up completely in value. It's like almost unplayable if you're a control deck.
I remember there was something that Ben Stark said many, many years ago, which was that control decks want all of their interaction to be cheap because they need to interact in the early game before they take over in the late game, and obviously it goes well with card advantage spells. Whereas aggro decks want their removal to be expensive because you want to curve out and then hit 4 or 5 mana and remove the big thing that's brick walling you.
Yes.
I feel like that advice might have dimmed a little bit, but it sounds like you're kind of talking towards a similar sort of idea.
No, that's kind of what I'm saying. I mean, the only reason Trial of Agony is bad in control, and it's not even that bad actually, but it's because like you don't kill the thing you actually care about. Like you have a 3/3 breaking their 2/2, and they can choose to kill their 2/2. Like that's not the greatest. But if you don't have any board presence, you will like target a 2-drop and the 3-drop, and then you will still. It's kind of like a shock, right? In that case. So yeah, I do think it's like pretty good for that. And also, you can actually do this thing where you Trial of Agony, target 2 of their things, and then in response, you Scorching Dragonfire. They're like small creature, and then they have to.
That actually came up on the coverage. I can't remember if it was you or someone else that.
No, it
was
me. Yeah, I was asking a judge about it, and then as the judge was like fetching the head judge to get the right answer, I realized that wasn't the best play I could make, and so I didn't make it. So good to get a bit of extra thinking time.
Yeah, that's quite funny. Yeah, I'd never seen that before. It was a very clever play.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was also surprised when I was looking at my hand and came up with like, wait, hold on, can you do this? Yeah, it was nice.
Okay, that's fantastic. All right. If you don't have any other final thoughts on this, we wanted to take just a very quick look at your day 2 or draft 2 deck. So here we've got a list of all of the cards that you picked in the order that they're picked. Is that right?
Yes, that is exactly right. So I did reconstruct my picks almost like exactly as they were. I know it's the right packs for sure because they're stamped in different stamps. Of course, as always, there could be a little bit of a mess with the order, but this was also in a feature pod. This wasn't pod 1. I was like 3 seats away from the feature drafter, which was Sean Emmanuel. So like I can't glean that much, but obviously from like his first pick is like my 5th pick pack. So I could like see at least, is the Defiant Survivor in that pack? And yes, it was. So I know that like that was what I picked there. So yeah, that's how I reconstructed this. And I was actually seated between Seth Manfield and Marcio Carvalho. So kind of a tough seat.
Yeah.
Obviously both of those I know like kind of like their low curve aggressive decks, and actually they both ended up drafting red white on both sides of me.
Okay. Yep.
So the way this draft went, it's kind of like, we see the first 4 picks there is like blue, white, green, red. And it's very much in like that style I was describing with like I'm very comfortable being in like a lot of different colors in the first few picks. The notable thing is that like the Splitskin doll in that pack there was a baseball bat, which I'm noting not as a potential pick, but because I think it's a really important piece to the green-white deck, which I haven't drafted much, but like you want like if you can have a couple baseball bats in that deck, it's really good. But you want to wield them. You want to be absolutely certain you're the only green-white player, because like otherwise that archetype is just not coming together. So I wanted to wield that baseball bat. And then I picked the Monstrous Emergence. It was kind of a close pick, but because I am thinking about that bat. So it's the same thing as we just discussed with the black cards that I kind of like see that could potentially wheel. It's like playing into it. And then like the 4th pick was between another baseball bat and the ticket booth. And and I think there was also no, it's not this pack yet. So and there's always like some blue cards that are kind of like on the line. So I'm definitely noticing that it could be like blue is open here, but like the blue cards are just a bit worse than the other stuff. And if I take the baseball bat here, it kind of works well. Like I go like Splitskin doll into Monstrous Emergence, into baseball bat. I table the other one. My life is a dream. Everything's great. But what happens if I pick this baseball bat? And I pick the next picks as if I'm green white, and then it doesn't table. It's really awkward for me then, right? And so in order to avoid that disaster, I'm instead saying it's possible I can. So if the first one wheels, I am going to take it, most likely no matter what my next picks are. And if the second one wheels, I can move into green white. Until then, I am going to slightly like value the green and white cards slightly more, but not to a like significant degree. So this is how you see the next pick being like the Defiant Survivor, not like the greatest card, but it's pretty nice in green-white, and also has some other like utilities. Especially combining it in a removal heavy deck, it's kind of nice. Actually, the Defiant Survivor ended up being unbelievable in my deck. But yeah, I'll get to that in a moment. And then Orphans of the Wheat, another card just like kind of weak, but really good in green-white, and was like kind of about a weak pack anyways. And you could combine the Orphans with the Floodpitch Drowner and the Spitskindle in like blue-white, or you could like do it with the Ticket Booth in red-white. And so these things are still like things like there's still a lot of like avenues open here. I pick a Ghostly Keybearer. I think actually the Orphans pick was between that and Murder, which was really close for me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, but because of the value on the green cards, I took the Orphans, but noted that there was a 6-pick Murder, so that could potentially be a signal, right? So now I have this like green-white thing going on. There's potentially also some black stuff. Then I see a Ghostly Keybearer. It's like not an amazing card, but it's a pretty solid blue card and really good in some of the. It's really good if you get the Meat Locker. And that's that way you can get a ton of tempo if you just pay 3 mana for Meat Locker and you get to unlock it by just attacking with your Keybearer.
Yeah.
And so like that goes well in like more of a controlling blue shell. You could also pair this with white. Maybe I can pair it with the black that's coming along. Maybe I pair it with a Tunnel of Hate. There's like a lot of different threats. And then I get the Final Vengeance, pick 8. And at this point, it's like, okay, that's, that went around the table. There was a Murder 2 picks ago. I think this is a similar case as before. I think black is wide open, and there were not that many good black cards. So the reason I hadn't seen that many black cards in these first 5 picks is just because the packs just didn't have much black, and not because it was closed. So this is why it's really important to pay attention to the cards you see rather than like paying attention to what you don't see.
Yeah, and this is a really nice illustration of the philosophy you were talking through in draft 1, where you're not crafting a deck as such from the cards that you've taken, but you're talking through 3 or 4 different strategies or configurations that you could move into with the combination of cards that you've got.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm kind of like straddling the line there. Again, the Malevolent Chandelier pick 9 was like, if I am in the controlling black deck, which I am now much more likely to end up in, it's going to be an important piece in some of these like super grindy decks. We actually discussed it specifically in Pod Draft. Like, if there's 2 people drafting these really slow decks and one of them picks the Chandeliers a little bit higher than the other, that person is going to be massively favored if they ever match up, right? And so I wanted to be that person picking the Chandelier a little bit higher than you might want to.
We had exactly this especially during Karlov Mana drafts. One of the guys who's often in a pod with me, we often love drafting these very long late game grindy decks, and we ended up taking the I can't remember the equivalent of it from MKM, but the thing that lets you reshuffle cards from your graveyard back into your deck. It became really important. Like whoever had that one was going to be the one who had the better late game deck.
Yeah, exactly. And it was also really important for me in this draft. Actually, enabled me to defeat Charlie Manuel. Wait, did it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. It was really important in like my in me and Sean's match, because we actually both had the Chandelier in our decks, and we had like this.
Oh, right.
And he was trying to aggressively mill himself, and I had to like try and kill him before then. Or I had to like keep up removal and make sure he couldn't like assemble the Chandelier plus something great. Like keep it. It was it was awesome match. And then I see the baseball bat reel, and so I'm open to this whole black thing. Again, this pack doesn't have good black cards because there were none, right, to begin with. So I'm just going to take the bat, as is my plan. I'm going to try and see if the second bat wheels. If it does, I might abandon this whole black thing I'm doing and just be green-white. It doesn't pick a Peculiar Lighthouse. I honestly don't know why, but I assume it's just an empty pack and there was a land. Because I only have 1 red card right now, so it's like not that likely that I end up being red. It's much more likely that I'm like either green-white or like blue-black, probably, with the 2 blue cards I have, combining with the black. Then the baseball bat pack comes around. The bat is missing, so I pick a black card here, the Fear of the Dark. It's totally fine in blue-black. And and then pick the Cautious Survivor for like the green-white deck, which, it's not off the table, right? Because I've spent some picks going there, so it's possible I end up there. And then like kind of like after pack 1, I'm straddling, like thinking that I'm either going to be blue-black or green-white, but I'm also trying to notice how can these intertwine. What will my blue-white deck look like? What will my green-black deck look like, etc. And just making sure that I can kind of like see all the like different synergies I have available to me. But it definitely looks like I have like half of a green-white pack 1 here, and then I have this like loose idea that black could be open.
Yeah, can I ask you a little bit more about the green-white archetype? I think my least favorite kind of discourse in draft circles is that certain archetypes are unplayable and they're atrocious and you should never touch them. I think it's overblown for arena drafts, and I think it's just actively false for pod drafts. And green-white was the one that fell into that category here. Do you think that it was a totally fine place to be if you can guarantee that you're the green-white drafter at the table?
Yes, I think it is a playable thing, and I do agree with you that in pod drafts, it's much like in arena drafts, you could get away with never drafting green-white in your life, and it's fine. It doesn't necessarily mean it's unplayable, but functionally unplayable, right? Because if you don't ever need to draft it, it's like you probably don't miss out on much, even if you don't like touch it at all, right? So it's like functionally unplayable. But but in pod draft, it's much harder to get into the good archetypes. So you need to know like what the suboptimal archetypes look like and how you make those good, so you can capitalize on the cards that wheel. So for instance, in this case, if both the bats had wheeled, and actually I think Marcio just took the second bat like right under my nose. I think,
right.
No, actually no, I think Seth took it. Like I passed the bat to him, and he was like, "Oh, bat, maybe I should be green-white." And so we actually two people who was like kind of like eyeing that green-white life. Next to each other, which is another thing that can happen, right? And why it's really important that like you don't commit too hard. And also it kind of relates to the thing about picking up on the signal, right? It would have been, there's an argument that I should take that over the ticket booth, the baseball bat, so I don't send that signal, because the second one coming around is much more likely to get picked up. Because like Seth might be thinking the same thing I'm thinking, right? So but yeah, so around the question of like green-white, definitely I think a like playable archetype here. Preferably, I'm not in green-white though. I would say so.
Okay,
but I do have the makeup for a green-white deck. Right now, I have 6 cards for the deck, and they're like all reasonable. And like they're like cheap and fine. And for the black stuff, it's a lot more vague, right? I have a Final Vengeance, then I guess I have a Fear of the Dark, and the blue cards like Flood Pitch Drone are really good. Key Bearer, okay. So I don't have like much ground to stand on, except I saw Murder 6th and I saw Final Vengeance 8th. And then I get another leg to stand on as I open pack 2.
Yeah, so like with the way that you've ended pack 1, you could take, I think, literally any powerful card in the set from this point.
Yeah, I think I would pass on a red card unless it was broken.
Sure. But yeah, like if you opened, Overlord of the Boiler Bilgers, like you can still take that.
Probably yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have Procure the Lighthouse. Maybe I could. Yeah, it could be like Teamer or something. Yeah, I'll make it work.
But as it turns out, you see an unstoppable slasher.
Yes. So I mentioned earlier the thing of like the different avenues you can do to make sure you get rares. And one of them was like, just like reading your seat and then getting past it to you, especially in pack 3. But the other thing is just like taking mana fixing, or in this case, just leaving myself so open with my first few picks that I can like let that guide me. I will say that like I'm a lot more like inclined to take the slasher here. If it was a blue rare, I'm also a little bit lower on it. But because I had the read of black being open specifically, I'm much more inclined to take the slasher here, because I think it's fairly likely that I'll get a lot of black cards in pack 3. And so like it's just like but this was one of the nice ways that I let myself be open to take a lot of different types of rares. And then the second pick, I think I remember that being really close, because there was some blue card I could take, or I could take the threats around every corner, which is by a much better card. And I had this idea of like, I'm either blue-black or green-white. And when I take the slasher, much more likely to be blue-black, though the slasher is not like an amazing card in blue-black specifically. And then I see the threats around every corner, and it's like, okay, so I might actually be like a Sultai thing or just green-black. And now I have to repurpose the green cards I've taken into the context of what if I'm green-black. And so the Cautious
Sure.
Survivor, I got second last. It's actually incredibly nice in green-black. And like the Fear of the Dark, like these go really well together. It's just like, these big bricks, brick walls that can like stall the game and let you like utilize your removal. And the threat around every corner synergizes with my Final Vengeance and with my
Oh,
Defiant Survivor.
nice. Yeah.
And so, like, there's some of these like pieces that are coming together of, okay, I can actually also be this green-black base or just a straight Sultai deck potentially. So I'm picking the threats here, and like that's kind of how I see my draft going. So I'm foregoing the white cards. It didn't seem like white was that open anyways, but green did seem like it could be open. It's just see like the last few picks of my pack one was like no white cards except for the baseball bat, but there was this Cautious Survivor, and I feel like that's a signal that it goes so late, right? And so I pick up, and then I get an Annex.
That is wild.
Yeah, and so that's obviously like that's like one of those like lucky things, right? Because I didn't have a control to like read the draft to that side of the table. I know they weren't likely to be black because again there were just no black cards. Like they'd seen an 8th pick Murder, which is to be fair a signal, but it didn't see another part of that signal because I picked up on that Final Vengeance. Again, very important I picked that Final Vengeance because otherwise I'm sending that signal and I'm not getting that Annex in this pack. And so very happy to get the Annex there. Kind of like works well with what I'm trying to do. Now I'm for sure black, and
that tells you that the two on your left are on your right are definitely not black. Just like nowhere near. Right? You would try to twist what you've got to be able to play Annex.
Yes, exactly. So I can also kind of like expect that I should get some good black cards for the rest of this pack, and maybe even late. And and then like I have actually a really like interesting pick. I think if I'm counting this correctly, no, I think the Annex pack actually had Vile Mutilator. And that's another one that I'm like, oh, that would actually be nice to get back. But like, it's more likely to table because I know that the people who could be picking it like, 9th and 10th aren't going to be black because they would have picked the Annex. And so
what, you didn't want to try to table the Annex?
Oh, that's true. Yeah, might as well go for that. But those two cards work really well together because it's like a demon, or you can sacrifice the Annex if you're about to die to it. And so like it just works pretty well. So yeah, definitely eyeing that Vile Mutilator. And then you just like pick up some fixing. I do pick up the Meat Locker here because again, even though I picked the threats, I might not necessarily be green. I could still be blue-black, or I could be the Sultai thing. So just leaving the options out for that. And I pick some mana fixing too. Like I'm heavy leaning into Sultai. Ghost Vacuum, which is a nice rare. And I pick a Final Vengeance up like pick. Is that like, that's pick 9. So that was in the Unstoppable Slasher pack. That's like Final Vengeance as tables. And it's like, just because there was so few black cards in pack 1, just like almost no one at the table was black. I think there was one other black drafter. And not all black decks want Final Vengeance. Now I have 2 of them, so I have to like be a bit careful with like making sure I have enough enablers for them. So I'm looking for like the rats, for instance.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. But it's interesting also that even if there weren't a lot of black cards open, no one seemed to be willing to speculate on it.
Yeah, but like at this point, it might be a little bit too late for most people to speculate on it.
Sure. Yeah.
So yeah, just a cut. I'm gonna cough here. All right. That's a lot of talking. Let's try and wrap this up. I'll drink the rest of my tea with honey. And
okay. And so we round that pack out with Slavering Branch Snapper. You get your Vile Mutilator in the end. Clammy Prowler, probably not where you're hoping to be, and then a couple of black cards at the end. And so then I guess you've still got the option kind of anywhere in the Sultai space.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still envisioning myself as a Sultai deck. I think to a bit of a fault, actually. I don't think I quite realized that because my final deck actually ends up just being straight green-black. And I don't think I quite realized that. yet that was actually a possibility. The thing my deck is really missing right now, so it has the 2 Final Vengeances, but it doesn't have and the Vile Mutilator. So there's a lot of pressure on me to have sacrifice outlets. And the Fear of Lost Teeth helps a little bit. The Fear of Lost Teeth helps a little bit. The Resurrection Cultist, I mean, not so much. And I'm also really missing 2-drops. So a card that's really on my mind here is Innocuous Rat, because it's a 2-drop and a sack outlet. So it kind of like rounds out the deck nicely. And but I do have like my top end, right? I have my rares and my Vile Mutilator, and I do have some removal in the 2 Final Vengeances, but looking to get more as well. So obviously going into pack 3, looking for 2-drops and removal, never the spot you want to be in, unless you have a really clear read of like what the seed is. And again, it was the case where like there was not that many black cards open in the pack 1 around the table, but in pack 3, just a ton of black cards. And so I get my 2-drops with the Brute Spinner and the Overgrown Zealot, and then I get like Withering Torment, Murder, Nowhere to One, Withering Torment, and it's and again, it's just like it's kind of the same story as before, right? It's just the cards are different, right? But it's not exactly the same as the first draft, where I'm wavering a lot in pack 1, noticing some patterns that could potentially be a signal that something is open, and then like hard reacting to that. In this case, I have much more of an incentive to hard react in the correct decision because I get Slasher and Annex. So again, there's there's something fortunate about this draft that makes it like work out well. But the people passing to me were definitely not black, and so I ended up with this pile of removal spells and an Innocuous Rat. And even you see the very last pick I get before the basic land is a second Innocuous Rat.
Oh wow!
I even get a Defiled Crypt, which is really important because it's another sacrifice outlet for my Final Vengeance, and it combos with my Ghost Vacuum, where you can make 2/2s every turn.
I've played that combo as well. That's very cool.
It's real nice. So like just these like even the good cards I want real. I pick an Anthropede, I'm thinking as a sideboard card, over a Slavering Branch Snapper, and that was like a ridiculously bad pick. I think I was just thinking, well, I'm not gonna play the Branch Snapper anyways, because I'm gonna be this 3-color deck and I don't have space. I have too many playables. And then I build my deck and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna be a green-black deck. And so
And so I've actually got an image of your final deck here. Give me one sec, I'll just send it to you as well. I hope that's not an image for ants.
It's an image for ants. But that's okay.
That's all right, we can work with it. Yeah. Okay, so here's the final deck here, and as you say, just ended up being straight green-black, and this looks nice.
It's a really good deck, and it's a very like different style of deck, right, than the first one, but kind of came out of the same philosophy of like making sure you focus on the like style of the direction and style of deck you're wanting to do. I ended up leaving the Fear of Lost Teeth on the sidelines, but that could have been like that was a card I was planning to put in my deck before I picked up that second rat. And we unfortunately didn't get to see some of the picks I made because I'm sure there's a couple spots where it's like I pick an objectively like weaker card, but because it fits better into my strategy or in the holes I have, right? But I actually end up with you can see on the side there I have the blue package, which is like the mana fixing and some of those blue cards that I ended up boarding in my first round against Sean Emmanuel because he was also Sultai deck, and so I just like boarded in more grind, and it was much easier to play that matchup once I had those blue cards. So even though I thought I was Sultai throughout the like most of the draft and ended up not playing it, those picks weren't wasted. I just like utilized them in a different way. And this was
were you prepared with them sleeved up when you sat down at every round?
I knew already that was a possibility that was going to sideboard them. Because like I started building my deck with them in it, and then realized, wait, I should just be green-black. And just be consistent.
I've done the awkward thing at Sealed sometimes where I want to do the color swap, but then have to do the awkward get up and run over to the basic land station.
Yeah, that's it. Or like ask a judge, can you please bring me 3 mountains? And
that's great. And so both of these decks that we've looked at today went 3-0.
Yes, I will say as a caveat, the second deck here was a like kind of like the 5-2 3-0, as in I was in pot 1, but I was X2. So and the way it works is like in the first round I got paired against the other X2. Like that's normal, right? And I win that round. And then in my second round I'm against Sean Emmanuel. No, wait, sorry. I'm actually Sean Emmanuel was the last round of this draft, I think. Yeah. So in my second round, I'm paired against Lucas Dukov, who was X1, and so, but it doesn't pair based on record in the draft. It pairs based on record in the tournament. And since I was 5-2 and I had won my match, and Lucas was X1 and had lost his match, we're paired.
Right.
Because we have the same record. Yeah. And then I win that one. And in the next round, I'm paired against Sean Emmanuel, who's XO yesterday, and now has 2 losses. So he's in my bracket.
Right.
So I was 2-0 playing against an 0-2. And I beat Sean Emmanuel there. So our pod ended up having 2 3-0s and I think 2 0-3s actually, which is a bit weird that can happen. And yeah, sadly, like those games weren't featured on coverage because there was, the other 3-0, right? Like they had, I think it was Seth who 3-0'd the pod with his red-white deck beating Marcio in the finals with the other red-white deck. But yeah, I would have loved to play like a, 4th round of that draft against Seth with this deck. That would have been very cool. To like see if my pile of removal spells could beat his pile of acrobatic cheerleaders.
You should have done that to decide who gets Player of the Year.
That would have been so cool if it was a tie.
That would have been amazing. All right, you've been talking at us for about 7 hours now. Sorry, talking with us. That was incredibly insightful. I have learned a lot from that. I sincerely hope
I'm glad to hear. I've been thinking about this, like doing this video for a while, like since looking at my draft decks and kind of like thinking about the way I approach this, and so I kind of wanted to give out some information, but then I just got caught up in other things such as a 4-month hibernation.
Yeah. No, it happens to the best of us, but we finally got our sleep schedules to align and got together to do this. If people want to see us get together to do another video for Eighth Adrift, I'm sure we'll make it work in some way. But people, if you want to see this, please drop us a comment, let us know, and if you can support either this channel or especially Simon himself. Simon offers one-on-one coaching through Metafy. I've taken advantage of that coaching myself leading up to RCs, and it is Simon's insights in Constructed are every bit as nuanced and detailed as in Limited. So I really would strongly recommend people take advantage of that if you want to kind of level up leading into any important competitions that you're leading up to. Are there any other things you want to plug at the moment, Simon?
No, I think I'm good for now. Thank you for that call out with my my coaching. Yeah, that's definitely always available. And good luck with your next 8-man draft with these what are they called packs. Not party packs. They're called play boosters. There we go.
Yeah.
So yeah, because hopefully this is insight that is specifically relevant for the top 8 of your RCQ type of thing. It doesn't apply and transfer as neatly to Arena. If you draft this style in Arena, I think you'll often find yourselves train breaking more often than not, because it's less reliable on the signals and also just frankly less necessary to draft this way. But for those big high-level drafts, I think it's incredibly important.
Yeah, I mean, even if you're on, how much does it apply to say the pod drafts on Arena? On Moto, sorry.
Well, the same, because the people who play the pod drafts on Moto are people who are usually PT players. They don't really fire after the Pro Tour. It only fires before, and otherwise it's the top 8 of the limited events on Magic Online as well, which has the same thing of pod draft with skilled limited players.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, as always, please let us know what you think of these down in the comment section below. We usually get a big bump in subscribers after these videos, which is honestly the main thing that lets me know that you guys like them. So we are going to keep doing them as long as you keep doing that. If you would like to get in touch with Simon, you can follow him on Twitter at this address that is here. You can you can get in touch with DraftPunks at this email address here, or this Twitter account here. And you can always follow me personally. My name's Sam and I'm at calm_mirror. Now, Simon, do you remember how we close these videos out?
I do not. No, it's a news to me. Well, how do you close them out?
I'm going to ask you, do you remember what they call a werewolf on YouTube?
Is it a husky mourner?
Is it a what?
Like Duskmourn, but then husky instead of dusk, and then mourner instead of mourn? It's a mourning husky.
No. It's a like and subscribe.